What is up? Let's wait for the fam to come in. Let me turn this down actually right here. There we go. Let me get everything ready while we're waiting for people to come in. These are already like full. Grand Rising. Hello, welcome. We're going to be talking about the astrology of the week. We're going to be talking about the eclipse coming up on Wednesday. We have some actually really good astrology this week. I'm kind of excited about this week. I think let's wait for more people to come in before I just start spewing. Hi Jay. Hi Grace. Welcome everybody. Let's wait for some folks. Let's wait for folks to come on before we dive in. How's everybody's weekend? It's been hot over here in Southern California. Let me pull up the chart. Grand Rising. Hello. Good morning. I used to work with Grace at the credit union back in the day. The risings in Virgo. Awesome. 22-degree rising. 22 degrees. Sextiling my Venus. Exactly. Very interesting. Have a very interesting astrologically appropriate story real quick while we're waiting for people to come in. Venus went into Libra, which is my eighth house, which is where my south node is at. My Mars is at. I have Mars in Libra. And it's so funny because with Venus going into Libra last week, I actually had a conversation with this Libra man that he's in a foreign place. I have a ninth house Venus, so I'm always falling in love with foreign men. But anyways, he's in a foreign place, and me and this guy haven't talked in like a while. But it's so funny because as soon as Venus goes into Libra, my eighth house, my south node, my Mars, where my Mars and my south node are located, this Libra man that where his sun is right on my south node ended up reconnecting with me, or we ended up having a more in-depth conversation than we usually have. So, so interesting how Venus and Libra is bringing kind of like lovers back in a way, or it's kind of like reconnecting people, or it's having people ask themselves what they really want from like relationships and partnerships. This Venus and Libra transit, I think, is actually going to be very bountiful. And I think we're going to be seeing a lot of really cool things this week from Venus and Libra. And we're going to be talking about that today. Okay. So we got people, okay, we got like quite a few. We got people coming in. Excellent, excellent. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hi. Hello. How's everybody been doing? Like, how's everybody been feeling? This energy has been difficult, I must say. It hasn't been easy. There is a lot kind of happening right now, and I think we're entering a period starting with this eclipse coming up on Wednesday where things are going to get more extreme, more intense. Um, we're going to see people kind of losing their minds a little bit. I think that's been a big theme. People kind of like losing their minds, people kind of, being really dramatic, really chaotic, weird identity, ego stuff people are going to be going through with this eclipse. And I'm telling you right now, this eclipse in Leo is going to rupture a lot of people's sense of self or identity or their sense of ego. There's a lot of kind of identity crisis energy that I think we've been seeing it happen. I think it's also been in the media. I'm gonna be very honest with you guys. Like, I have been avoiding social media. I haven't really been on social media as much as I was when I was in Portland. When I was living in Portland, I moved back here to LA on June 28th. So I've been here for about, a little over a month now. I was on social media a lot because I was very isolated and I was very like by myself. So I would just be on social media a lot. But now that I'm with my family and I'm like more present, I'm like, you know, hanging out with my brother every day or going on walks every day, um, I just haven't felt the need to be on social media as much. I've felt the need to reclaim my life and to actually be more present in my lived experience. But also, there's been a lot of negativity on social media. And before we dive into the astrology of the week, we talk about the eclipse because that's what we're going to be talking about first. I just want to let everyone, I want to remind everyone to be very aware of what social media you're taking into your person, what you're watching, what you're observing. It's really interesting. I had this yesterday, one of my followers wanted me to look into a couple that I think they had, they murked their own kids or something, or they did something to their own kids. And I've been in a place the last few weeks where I don't really want to expose myself to any like death or, murder, like these like really intense things. And I'm gonna be honest, like the Nolan Well case took a lot out of me, like getting energetically involved with the Nolan Well case, looking at his chart, all that. It really took so much out of me emotionally. Like I'm a very sensitive person, I'm a very psychic person. And so it left me really distraught, it left me very distraught. It left me very energetically depleted. And last night was so interesting is I had this download come through that kind of was a reminder of just how sacred the sun, like how sacred tarot and astrology are. Like these are tools that we've been given by the divine, and we've got to treat them in a sacred way, you know? We shouldn't, I mean, the truth is that we really shouldn't be using astrology just for entertainment. We shouldn't be using astrology just to appease our curiosity. These are sacred sciences. Astrology, tarot, all the divination sciences, they're very powerful, they're very magical, and they could do a lot of harm, you know? And so we got to be very intentional with how we engage with astrology, tarot, with the art and the magic of divination. And we can't just be using them because oh, I'm just curious, or oh, let me just go ahead and it's like we tend to like be very flippant, very irresponsible with a lot of the gifts that we're given. And astrology, tarot, divination is a gift that we're given by the divine to be able to connect with them, right? So we got to treat these things sacredly. We got to treat them with delicacy. We got to respect and honor the magic that is astrology. And we got to be careful of what we're doing astrology for. Why are we looking at charts of murderers? Why are we looking at charts of psychopaths? Why are we looking at, like, what is the intention? What is the purpose behind that, right? And a lot of times when someone asks me to look at a chart, like they look at a celebrity chart or something, there has to be a big enough why. I have to feel or have to come up with the why behind it. You know, like just looking at a chart for entertainment value where there's no lesson involved, or there's nothing I can really help, like there's nothing I can offer, like there's no moral lesson involved with the chart read or by looking at the chart. I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to look at it. I don't use astrology for entertainment value. I take my astrology practice very seriously. It's a very sacred spiritual thing for me. My relationship with astrology started because of my spiritual awakening. The only reason I got to astrology is because the divine came to awaken me. That's the only reason why I'm doing astrology today. I did not want to be an astrologer. So I don't know if y'all know this. Those of you, many of you that have been following me for a long time, you know this. But a lot of you that are new don't know this. I never intended to be an astrologer. I didn't want to be an astrologer or tarot reader. I didn't want to get into spiritual, intuitive work. This was never my focus. It was never my mission. It was never something that I like called to me. Like I didn't wake up one day like, oh, I'm gonna be an astrologer or tarot reader, right? Um, I was chosen for this work. So for me, I was pushed out of banking. I got fired from banking. I went back to it, realized it wasn't for me. And then in that process of me getting fired in banking in 2019, I went through this whole spiritual awakening. And I ended up, coming to tarot and astrology for my own becoming, for my own healing, for my own self-discovery, right? Astrology and tarot were tools for my own spiritual development, and they still are. I still use them for that. So this is why I treat it with delicacy, and I think we should all be very mindful of what we're doing astrology for. Why are we doing astrology, right? What is also our spiritual value or what's our spiritual kind of foundation when it comes to astrology? Like, what's the intention of you interacting with the planets, you know? So I just want you guys to consider that because I get a lot of messages of people asking me to do astrology in meaningless, meaninglessly. Like, oh, look at this person's chart just because they're curious or just because like, oh, just look at this person's chart because I just want to know, But there has to be a big enough why. If you're gonna ask me to look at a chart for someone, you're gonna slide into my DMs. You need to tell me, you need to give me an important why, and it has to be beneficial to everybody. If you cannot give me a big enough why, and there's no benefit to me breaking down a chart, I'm not gonna do it. Period. I'm just not gonna do it. So the message being, treat astrology, tarot, divination like a sacred thing. It's magical, it's beautiful, it's special. We don't want to just be flippant and irresponsible with it, and we don't want to just use it, in a in a very shallow way. Like astrology is very meaningful, it's very powerful, it's very purposeful if you want it to be. I'm just saying this is my relationship with it. You don't have to have that relationship with astrology, but this is my relationship with it, right? And be mindful of what information you're taking in. There's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of toxicity right now on social media, and I really do think that, the powers that be, they're trying to guide us towards content that is more self-destructive or that is more toxic or that is more unhealthy. I just noticed this with the logarithms in general. Like it just seems like they want to show us content that is more sexual, that's more shallow, that's more about consumption and about, selling things to us. Like, meaningful, purposeful content, they're trying to like steer us away from, anything that's going to educate us or better us. It seems like the powers that be don't want us to be looking at that stuff. So we just got to be mindful. I have something in my teeth. Oh no, I thought I saw something in my teeth. Okay, all right. Well, let's kind of dive in. Let's talk about the astrology of the week. Despite the fact that there is an eclipse this week coming up on Wednesday, we have a solar eclipse in Leo. This week is actually kind of magical. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. This week, there's some really cool beneficial stuff that we can experience this week or that can be had this week. I'm going to talk about this briefly and then we're going to go more in depth with it, okay? But so what do we have this week? We have Mercury who just went into Leo yesterday, okay? Mercury has been retrograde in the sign of Cancer for he's been in the sign of Cancer for the last 10 weeks. He retrograded in Cancer 3 weeks ago now, 3.5 weeks ago now. And he was retrograde for 3 weeks in the sign of Cancer. So Mercury has just been sitting in the sign of Cancer. And it's been emotional and it's been confusing. And, Mercury, because Mercury is a planet that has a lot to do with jobs and routine and habits, Mercury as a planet, he really moves things forward. He gives us instruction on what our day-to-day life looks like. A lot of people that are in transition right now when it comes to like work, career, their routine, their health, things like this, they've been feeling very stuck or very stagnant, or they haven't seen a lot of movement in their life because Mercury literally has been sitting in Cancer and not moving, right? So the beautiful thing that we have happen this week, everybody coming in, welcome. I'm just talking about Mercury and Leo. Mercury went into Leo yesterday on the 9th. The beautiful thing that we have about Mercury this week is not only does he go into Leo, not only is he in Leo as of yesterday, the 9th, okay, but he is going to be making a beautiful sextile to Venus and Libra. This sextile goes exact on Friday, and Mercury is going to catch up to Venus, and Mercury is forming this really harmonious relationship with Venus, who's in her domicile. She's in Libra. She's in the sign that she rules. She's in the sign that she functions very well in, right? And not only that, Mercury's going to eventually conjoin Jupiter. So he is going to meet up with Jupiter during his transit in Leo. So what this tells me is that this is going to be a week of a lot of expansion and growth. And this is going to be a week of a lot of opportunity when it comes to Mercury and Venus things. So this can be a week where there's very significant people that we meet. new connections, new relationships, new friendships, new social circles that we kind of engage in with the Mercury sextile to Venus. This can also be a week where people are offered a job, they're offered some kind of contract, or there could be something where we come back together and we forgive each other and we talk things through and if we figure out, whatever mess. Venus in Libra is trying to bring harmony and balance back to our relationship life, right? So we got to keep in mind Venus is at 3 degrees Libra. She just entered Libra last week, I believe on Thursday. Let me close my door really quick. And so Venus, she's kind of in this she's in this stage of like trying to fix and repair things from the damage that was caused when Venus was going through Virgo and squaring Mars. And this is another thing we got to be mindful of is Venus and Mars are still in a sign-based square. Mars is going to be ingressing into Cancer this week, which is another thing that we're going to talk about. But I really think we need to enjoy and we need to make ourselves available. We need to receive the benefits even of the Mercury Venus sextile this week. It's going to be around it's started yesterday going to today, but it's going to be around all week. And we really need to be open to the new connections, to the new friendships, to the new opportunities. We also need to be available for fixing and repairing relationships because that's also something that Venus and Libra is going to like call forth. Okay. So there's that. There's the Mercury sextile to Venus, and then also Mercury conjoining Jupiter. And Mercury will conjoin Jupiter, I believe, at the end of the week. Let me take a look and see. I'll tell you right now. Not even at the end of the week. Holy, it's like actually a lot sooner because Mercury's like he's speeding by. So Saturday, August 15th, Mercury Jupiter conjunction. Very auspicious, lucky, blessed day. We're gonna go deeper into this as well. The other thing I just noticed, particularly, so the one thing I just noticed about August 15th, about this Saturday, is as Jupiter and Mercury coming together in Leo, we also have the moon go into Libra with Venus. So we have a moon Venus conjunction. Someone tell this man that he's my husband. And like, I swear, he just joined the live right now. Everybody wave at Enrico Talvez. That man's my husband, by the way. He's fighting it. He's resisting it. He doesn't want to accept the truth that we are divine partners, but he'll get it one day. He'll wake up to the truth one day. Okay. One of the things we also need to be a little aware of this week with Venus in opposition to Neptune, we're gonna have. I'm not the shy one, I promise you. With Venus opposite Neptune, there could be a little delusion or a little deception when it comes to relationships and partnerships. This is a week we got to be a little mindful of being taken advantage of financially because of the Venus Neptune opposition. So, Venus is the planet of money and resources, and Neptune can, in his lower vibration, especially when he's being activated by an opposition, he can be about kind of like deception and hidden things or people trying to scam us or even us losing money, losing objects, losing material things. Oh, Louis, you're blushing. Of course I am. No, I'm kidding. Me and that guy, we go back like I can't even tell you how far back we go. We go back years, like when I was in my early 20s. Like that's how far back we go. Louis is a gem of a man. Thank you, thank you. You guys are so funny. So, with the Venus Neptune opposition, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We're just kind of doing a little bit of an overview right now, okay, before we deep dive. So we're going to talk about Mars in Cancer. We're going to start off with the solar eclipse in Leo. We're going to talk about Mars in Cancer, and then we're going to talk about the Mercury Jupiter sextile. And yeah, so then our solar eclipse is on Wednesday. Okay, let me see if there's any other astrology that I kind of just want to briefly cover before we kind of start the deep dive. I want to be more mindful of our time today. I was like live for 5 hours last week and I was just rambling and I want to be a little bit more mindful, a little bit more on topic today. So, okay, just Mars is ingress into Cancer. Any retrogrades that we got to be mindful of? No. No planets moving in or out of retrograde. Enrico, get him before. So the let me tell you what the hard thing is about Enrico, okay? He only speaks Portuguese. So he's in Brazil and he speaks Portuguese, and I'm an American and I speak English. And so language barrier has been a big issue for us over the years. One of us is going to have to learn the other language, really. I think that's what's going to have to happen, you know. I'm not good at languages. So this is the thing. I have Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, burnt out by the sun, within a degree of the sun. So I have Mercury combust. And I really see how my Mercury struggles in certain ways. And where my main place where my Mercury struggles is with language. I have a really hard time learning another language. It's like this thing that's really, really tough. You know, I've tried, but it is like Google. I know Google Translate. Yeah, they have Google Translate for the AirPods now and stuff. Yeah, they're coming up with that stuff. Yeah, they're coming up. Okay, so let's go. Let's talk about the solar eclipse in Leo. 922 solar. How far away are we? Solar eclipse in Leo. Okay. All right. So we have our solar eclipse this week. Hold on, give me a second. On Wednesday. It is going to be at 1:36 p.m. Eastern Time, 10:45 a.m. roughly Pacific Time. So it's right in the middle of the day. Don't think we'll be able to see it from our position. Um, yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to see it over here in the States, but I don't know. I could be wrong. I'll have to look into that. But let me go ahead and pull up the chart. Hold on. I got to pull up the chart for the eclipse. So it's August 12th, 2026. Does anybody know if we'll be able to see it? August 12th, 2026. Divine body language. Just wear those Ray-Ban glasses, someone says. The translating ones. August 12th, 2026. 10:45 a.m. Okay. Birth city. So, what is Leo, right? We've been in Leo season. This Leo season is flying by the way. It's just crazy how fast it's moving. So what is Leo, right? What does Leo rule over? Leo rules over kings, queens, leaders, bosses. Leo rules over authority figures, so like police officers. Leo also rules over children. It rules over the father. Leo is also associated when it comes to health. So Leo rules over the back, the spine. Leo is also connected to the heart, right? The cardiovascular system is also connected to Leo. So Leo has a lot to do with our vitality. Leo has a lot to do with our energy. Leo is also the sign connected to our ability to attract attention, to be seen. It's the planet of our ego and our confidence. It's the planet of who we are. So we are very much attached to the sun, especially Western astrology. Western astrology, Leo rules over the sun. The sun is a foundational planet when it comes to Western astrology. You know, sun sign astrology is like the big popular thing, right? That everyone knows about. Everyone knows their sun sign. Oh my gosh, right? So if we think about Leo, you know, popularity, celebrities, CEOs, you know, billionaires, you know, the president. Uh, Leo is also it's also gold. It rules over the element of gold. It's also, what else is Leo? Authority figures, leaders, the back, heart, children. What else is Leo? What else is Leo? Oh, Leo's also like fun, creativity, parties, celebrations, right? Leo is also dance and self-expression and our ability to perform, our ability to take the stage and all these things, right? So these are all um, connected to the sign of Leo. Yeah, actors, right? So because we're having an eclipse, where the sun is being, so what is an eclipse? Okay, let's kind of talk about an eclipse. We kind of talked a little bit about Leo. Let's go ahead and talk about what an eclipse is. So an eclipse is literally a new moon. So it's when the sun and the moon are coming together, and they're coming together within 18 degrees of the north node or the south node. So the nodes are responsible for blocking out the light of the sun or the moon during an eclipse. The only time an eclipse can happen is when we have a lunar event, either a full moon or a new moon, that's right next to the nodes. The closer they are to the nodes, the more exact the eclipse will be. So if we have an eclipse that's right at 0 degrees on the south node or the north node, it'll be a total eclipse. The farther the eclipse is from the nodes, the more partial it will be. So with this particular eclipse, it's happening at 20 degrees, which is a Scorpio degree. It's also within 10 degrees away from the nodes. So if you're looking at the mean node, which is the average node, not the true node, okay, the mean node is still in Pisces and Virgo at 0 degrees. And I think this is very important because every eclipse season, over the last 18 months, while the eclipses have been in Pisces and Virgo, we've been seeing a lot of layoffs. We've been seeing a lot of people getting let go. We've been seeing businesses close and things like this. I do believe that we're going to see a continuation of that pattern when it comes to labor, when it comes to work. But specifically with this particular eclipse, it's going to hit people that are working in leadership, that are working in upper management. It's going to hit leaders and bosses, business owners, and entrepreneurs. So if we kind of take a look at the story of the last 18 months, especially when it comes to employment, because Virgo is connected to employment. The South Node is where Virgo's at, wrapping up in the next like few weeks, but we still have to finish out this South Node at 0 degrees, where the mean node is at zero, right? So we've had 18 months of people losing jobs, pretty much, right? Seen a big transformation and change with the workforce. There's been people that have been laid off or let go or have struggled with employment, right? So now that it's a solar eclipse in Leo, but with the South Node in Virgo, what area of employee or what realm of employee do you think is going to be impacted by this? Well, it's going to be CEOs, leaders, and bosses, business owners, managers. I do believe we're going to be seeing CEOs stepping down. I do think we're going to be seeing world leaders or global leaders getting ostracized or passing away or, getting overthrown in some type of way. In ancient astrology, the kings and queens of old that were aware of astrology always feared they always feared the eclipses because the eclipses were ominous to them. A lot of leaders would experience their downfall or would experience an illness during an eclipse, especially kings and queens, because why? Kings and queens are ruled by the sun, right? Leaders are ruled by the sun. The sun is the central authority. The sun is the planet that keeps all other planets in orbit around it. So, the sun as the authoritative king planet, right? What we will be seeing is now that the sun is getting eclipsed, literally the moon is going to block out the light of the sun. So, what is a solar eclipse? A solar eclipse is when the sun and the moon and the earth are in alignment. So the moon is passing in front of the sun. So what's happening? The moon is blocking out the light of the sun. The sun gets darkened, right? So if we think about the sun going dark or going black, right, or the sun kind of falling into a pit of despair with an eclipse, we can also see how, the sun being blocked out light-wise can literally be about CEOs, leaders, or bosses having a fall from grace, right? Being blacked out in some type of way, right? So I just want you guys to think about this because we're gonna see it when it comes to stories and things like this. Leo is also the sign of children, though, and so this is one of the things I think where the eclipse can be a little scary or it could be a little dangerous when it comes to children. One of the things I will, because it's at a Scorpio degree. Scorpio is about transformation and change. So one of the things I will say is just be a little mindful of your kids, see what's going on with them. The sun and the moon have a lot to do with the eyes. So, the sun rules the right eye and the moon rules the left eye. And so when the sun and the moon, when we get an eclipse, especially in Leo, this can literally show up as eye issues. It can show up as back issues. It can show up as spinal issues. But because if we're thinking about this more in like a spiritual or more in like a not such a tangible real way, or if we're thinking about the eclipse in a more like, what does this mean for us? What does it mean for us psychologically, emotionally, whatever? It's an eclipse in Leo at a Scorpio degree. So Scorpio is about transformation and change. It's about death and rebirth. It's about the purging of things and it's about the releasing of things. Leo is a sign of ego and identity. Leo is a sign of who you are. It's how you see yourself. It's how you perceive yourself. It's your conception of self, how you project yourself out to the world. But Leo is who you are in the public realm. So this is very important to understand. Who you are with your family, who you are in privacy, who you are with your kids and with your spouse, that's your moon. You are your moon when you're at home behind closed doors interacting with your like everyday family, okay? Who you are in the public realm though, who you are on social media, who you are when you go to an event, who you are at work, especially if you're in a leadership position or authority position, right? That is your sun. When you step outside and the light of day is touching your skin, that is your sun. You are embodying your sun. That is who you are. Okay. So the sun has a lot to do with the identity that we project to the world. It has a lot to do with the way the world perceives us. It has a lot to do with our ability to garner attention, to garner respect, to have influence, okay, to be able to, impact the masses or to be able to even be witnessed and be seen by a large group of people. So when people have a strong sun, they're easily seen, they're easily noticed, they're easily recognized. Also, people will follow them. Sometimes we ask ourselves, why are people blindly following this person? And it's because this person will have a strong sun, even if their message, even if their morals, even if their ethics are off, it doesn't matter, right? What's so fascinating about the sun is that it has a lot to do with collective identity or collective ego. So when we have a leader, when a country or a city or even like, an organization elects a leader, the leader is literally a holding space, is a container for the organization, the population, the country's identity, the country's ego, the country's sense of self, right? And if we think about the sun also being the planet of the father, right? We tend to look at these leaders, or we tend to give these leaders kind of like authority and power, similar to what we would do with a father, with our own father, right? Like, oh, or even like if we think about like God, the Father, right? It's like the Son is also connected to that kind of devotion or that kind of what is it, fealty, like when you are loyal or devoted to like a king or to like a higher power or a higher authority, right? Um, there that the concept of God or even like the CEO, the president, whatever, they're a holding space and they're a container for the collective identity, for the collective ego. So when we have an eclipse in Leo, well, guess what? Guess what also happens? There's a little bit of a rupturing, there's a little bit of an identity crisis, there's a little bit of a fall from grace that leaders may have to where their following or their community will realize, like, wait a minute, who the hell have we been following? Like, who is this person? We thought that this leader was this person or whatever, whatever, and now we're realizing like they're not honest, they lack integrity, they're not being truthful with whatever they're saying, right? So I do think we're going to see a lot of that in some type of way with this eclipse. We're going to see kind of people falling away from false leaders or people standing up to false leaders or people or even leaders or people in the public eye having like a big fall from grace in some type of way. Okay. If you are a Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, or a Taurus, if you have your sun, moon, or rising in these signs, okay, or if you have like a stellium, whatever placements you have in this in a fixed sign, or fixed signs, you need to pay attention to what is shifting and what is moving in your life. Okay, starting this Leo season, but especially starting this week. I'm going to tell you right now. Let's talk about the eclipses. The reason why is this because you guys are being witnessed by the eclipses, right? The nodes in Leo and Aquarius, the north nodes in Aquarius, the south node in Leo, they're going to go to work on the fixed signs for the next 18 months, starting with this eclipse coming up on Wednesday, right? And this can be about fate or fortune, right? It's kind of like the spinning of the wheel on the game show, The Wheel of Fortune. Okay. You could win it all or you could lose it all. Okay. This is kind of how the eclipses work. Um, Sometimes, if you're on the north node side of the eclipse, so this is where the north node is going through Aquarius, we'll see Aquarians or you'll see your Aquarian house. And this is for everybody. Okay. This doesn't have to be for just fixed signs in general, if you kind of want to know where the eclipse is likely going to show up in your life or where it's going to shift or change things, you want to take a look at your Leo and Aquarius houses. Okay, the North Node brings success. The North Node brings ambition. The North Node brings earthly wins, earthly gains. So the North Node side of the eclipse, the Aquarius house, that's where we're going to be seeing a lot of growth. That's where we're going to see something new. That's where we're going to see energy coming in, new things coming in. It's going to come through our Aquarius house, okay? Where the South Node side of the eclipse, that is more about surrender, loss, purging, the releasing of things, right? So the South Node has a lot to do with fate, surrender, things that are beyond our control, where the North Node has a lot to do with destiny, things that are within our control, free will decisions that we make, how we are steering the course of our own life. That's the North Node, where the South Node is about detachment, surrender. Okay. So this solar eclipse in Leo is on the South Node side of the eclipse of the nodal axis, right? So the eclipse in Leo is right next to the south node. So what does this tell us? Hi, my love. Welcome. Thank you for being here. This tells us that this eclipse is going to be more so about surrender, release, purging, clearing things out. And we can kind of see that amplified as well with the fact that the eclipse is happening at 20 degrees, which is a Scorpio degree. It's a degree of transformation and change. Well, what are we releasing? What are we letting go of? The South Node is in Virgo, so this is unhealthy habits. This is unhealthy behaviors. This is jobs that are no longer serving us. This is routines that are no longer serving us. Okay, stuff like this. If we're letting go of Virgo things still. We're at the tail end of it. We're still letting go of Virgo things a little bit because the south node, the mean south node is at 0 degrees Virgo. The true node has already gone into Leo and Aquarius. Okay, but I'm someone that uses the mean node because I've noticed that the mean node tends to be more accurate, in my own opinion. This is just from my experience. Okay, and so we're still letting go of south node things. But what else are we letting go of? Solar eclipse in Leo at 20 degrees, we're letting go of old identities. We're letting go of our father trauma. We're letting go of our wounded childhood, who we were when we were back then and how that identity, how that difficult childhood experience, how that traumatic relationship with our father is still blocking us today. It's still wounding us today. Okay. A lot of folks, what we don't even realize, right, is that the reason why we're struggling with confidence and self-worth and a lot of stuff, it actually has a lot to do with how our concept of self and identity is kind of like broken or it's been hampered or it's been stifled in some type of way, right? In order for us to be confident, in order for us to take up space, in order for us to shine, we have to have a healthy sense of self. We have to have a healthy ego and we have to know who we are in a really deep way. Okay. What I've noticed is that when people have a little bit of a broken relationship, specifically with the father, but when they have a broken relationship with leadership and authority figures, or when they've experienced abuses of power by leaders and bosses, or they have a father wound, the father wasn't there for them, the father was controlling, or whatever, there tends to be this a little bit of the byproduct of that can be confusion around self. I don't know who I am, right? I all I know is who I don't want to be. I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be. So who do you want to be then, right? If you have trauma, if you if you had a terrible relationship with your dad, then it's important that you reclaim your son for yourself. You have to rebuild a relationship with your own son. We know when people are living within their sun or they've healed their sun because they shine, they glow, they're magnetic, they're confident, they're able to take on leadership or authority positions. They don't get swayed when someone tries to demean them or, tries to tell them who they are or attacks them, right? They don't get wounded or damaged. They're really resilient, they're really tough to that. And this is something that's very important for us to consider, particularly this week with the solar eclipse in Leo. How do you need to reclaim your sense of self? How do you need to reclaim your ego? How do you need to reclaim your sense of identity, your confidence from those that have taken it away from you or from those that have damaged it or wounded it? But I also think that it's essential that we kind of understand that we are all kind of going through this collective identity shift and this collective identity change. And this solar eclipse in Leo wants to kind of double down on this transformation that we're collectively going through, but also individually going through around identity. If there's parts about yourself that you do not like, okay, that you resent, or that you are like, I need to change this, this is the solar eclipse. This is the new moon solar eclipse to go ahead and shed light and shed love on that part about yourself, to go ahead and bring tenderness and bring compassion to that part about yourself. We have to understand that when it comes to our shadows, when it comes to the parts about ourselves that we don't like, we invite them to the table, we incorporate them, we integrate them into our person, and then that's where the healing and that's where the transformation and that's where the shedding can happen as well. But we got to be proactive. This solar eclipse in Leo is a reminder that we got to be proactive about the people that we want to become. And also, we have to let go of the shadow of Leo with this solar eclipse in Leo, which is doing things just for validation, doing things for approval, doing things just for attention. Um, the sun is a very performative planet, right? The sun literally rules over celebrities, performers, actors, people that are on stage, right? And what can be a pitfall for the sun is when the sun is performing or wanting to get attention just for approval or validation, right? When the sun kind of sacrifices its authenticity, it sacrifices purpose or meaning for the sake of approval, for the sake of validation, for the sake of acceptance, right? And I think this is something that we all need to be mindful of during this eclipse in Leo this week and this eclipse cycle, this eclipse season that we're stepping into, but also this eclipse cycle. So this eclipse season is going to be lasting about a month. Okay. So I always think of the first eclipse opening up the eclipse season, and then we have that 2 week period with the first eclipse. And then we're gonna have our lunar eclipse in Pisces. That's gonna be on the 27th, and that's gonna be a 2 week moon cycle. So I tend to think of eclipses as really being strong or prominent for the month, starting with the first eclipse, and then closing out after 2 weeks, the 2 week period after the second eclipse. Okay. So once we have our first new moon or full moon that isn't an eclipse after the eclipse season, then we're out of eclipse season, but we're still gonna kind of see the residual energy show up, right? We're still gonna kind of see eclipse themes kind of manifest at times. So it's just something that we got to be mindful of. Eclipses are strongest within the first 2 weeks of their occurrence, and then they kind of taper out, but will still have an impact for the next 6 months. So this is something that we always got to remember. But getting back to the solar eclipse in Leo, what I was saying is like we got to ask ourselves, who am I? Why am I doing the things that I do? And who do I want to be? Who do I want to become? Right? We're letting go, South Node in Leo. We're letting go of shadowy Leo tendencies. So this is being egocentric. This is being selfish. This is being, thinking you're always right all the time, thinking a little too highly of yourself, right? The sun can be an ego and an egotistical and an arrogant planet. What's so fascinating about Vedic astrology, which is very different than Western astrology, is they consider the sun to be a malefic or a negative planet. In Vedic Eastern astrology, the moon is the source of all joy, all contentment, all peace. And the moon is actually considered the benefic luminary. So it's the light that is good, is beneficial, brings love, it brings tenderness, it brings babies, it brings all good things. Where the sun is actually more destructive. The sun brings arrogance, ego. The sun brings success and power and authority, but the sun is also very detrimental, or can be very detrimental to family life, to home life, right? You have too much heat. If you think about the intensity and the heat of the sun, right? When you put more sensitive planets next to the sun, or if the sun is aspecting more sensitive planets like the moon and Mercury, it can actually do a lot of damage, right? The sun is a very, very hot planet. So, and this is also why I think, I'm just gonna say it. This is why I think that Western astrology could be very narcissistic. Is because Western astrology focuses too much on the sun. It gives too much power and authority to the sun. It gives too much importance to the sun, where the moon is so much, in my experience as an astrologer, the moon is so much more important. You know, if the moon has everything to do with your peace and your joy and your happiness and your contentment, the moon is your emotional stability, your family, your sense of home, your sense of safety, your sense of protection, right? So I think that we need to always we need to keep in mind that both the sun and the moon are very important, but we need to not give the sun more importance than the moon. The moon is just as important, if not more so than the sun. Because yeah, the sun will bring you vitality and happiness, but the moon will bring you peace. The moon will bring you consistency, stability, building out your moon, focusing on your moon. Even in synastry, good moon synastry will bring people together for forever. They'll be loyal, they'll be devoted, they'll have tons of babies together. Whereas sun synastry will not do that. Sun synastry tends to create a lot of problems and issues, where there's ego battles and there's arrogance and selfishness that shows up. So with the South Node in Leo, we're letting go, or with the South Node, with this lunar eclipse in Leo on the South Node side, right, of the nodal axis, we're letting go of unhealthy Leo things. We're letting go of unhealthy Leo things. Um, Low sense of self-esteem and self-worth, a weak ego. Like, wait a minute, some of us have to build up our ego. We have to build up confidence, right? Like, the way I explain it a lot of times is when I see someone that has a debilitated sun, I explain their sun placement like having like your sun is like a dwarf star. It's like really small and really tiny and it's really weak. And so when we have a debilitated sun, we need to go in the opposite direction. We need to build up our confidence. We need to give ourselves permission to be seen. We need to celebrate ourselves even more, right? So, but yeah, so going back to what I was saying about the fixed signs. If you are a fixed sign, Scorpio, Taurus, Aquarius, Leo, if you have your sun, moon, or rising in these signs, especially, the eclipses can show you that it is time for a little bit of evolution. It's time to change. Someone asked about debilitated suns. I'll go and speak on that really quickly. Debilitated sun is sun in Libra, sun in Aquarius, sun in the fourth, eighth, or 12th houses. Okay. Sun in Libra, sun in Aquarius, sun in the fourth, eighth, or the 12th houses. Sometimes sun in Capricorn, sometimes a Saturn ruled sun can also, so Sun in Capricorn can also be a difficult thing. Also, Sun in Taurus could also be a difficult thing, because the sun is in signs that it where it doesn't mesh well with the planet. So yeah. Anyways, so yeah, if you're a fixed sign, getting back to what I was saying, if you're a fixed sign, you have to prepare for this eclipse season to kind of ruffle your feathers a little bit and kind of make you uncomfortable, possibly. Okay. If you are a Leo or Aquarius, because it's happening along the first seventh house axis with you, right? Um, this is going to be about relationships and partnerships. This is going to be about you, your identity, how you show up in the realm of others. And Leo and Aquariuses are going to be going through a big identity reformation. They're going to be going through a big awakening of self. They're going to be going through spiritual awakening. They're going to be finding success when it comes to work and career stuff. They're going to finally figure out, hey, this is the direction that I want to go in. But also, right? We always got to remember the north node side of an eclipse, or the north node will bring us towards something, will invite us to a new direction, will open up paths for us, will bring us forward. But the south node will ask us to release something and let us go, usually at the same time. So what the eclipses are about, especially when they hit us, they open up the door to be like, hey, if you want this change, if you want this opportunity, if you want to grow in this direction, I got it for you. Here's the door, here's the pathway, here's the way forward. But are you going to be willing and okay to let this thing go or to move away from this thing or to release this thing so that you can make this thing happen? And so this is why during when the eclipses are hitting us, we need to be extra vigilant around our choices and our decisions and also in how we respond to circumstances or how we respond to things that happen, right? What I will tell you though is that many times eclipse energy will take away your agency. It will take away your willpower over a situation. So something will get removed or taken away from you, or something will happen that is beyond the scope of your agency or power, where you can't really do anything about it. Um, I recently had a client that their marriage has been rocky for quite a few years now. But something happened to where the spouse was the one that decided to leave the relationship and like move out and everything, right? And go into separation. So literally that's what eclipse energy can do, right? You've been twiddling your thumbs like, hey, I don't know if I want to be with this person. Hey, I don't know if I want to be with this person. You've been kind of in limbo with like, oh, do I want to be with this person? Do I want not want to be with this person, right? But then the eclipse comes around and then it's your spouse that makes the decision for you. Where it's like they're like, wait, I don't want to be with you no more. And you're like, oh, well, okay, well, then there's that. So it's that kind of the thing happening, but then your agency in the situation also being taken away from you, right? Like that's kind of what you wanted anyways. It's kind of what the energy was pushing guys towards anyways, but they were the one that pulled the trigger, right? So it's just something to keep in mind. It's something to think about because eclipses can really take away our agency or can leave us feeling very disempowered. All right. And we just got to be very aware of that. If you're a Leo and Aquarius, this will be in the realm of relationships and partnerships. This will be about your family life. This will be about you. Another thing that the eclipses can activate, or another thing that the eclipses can trigger, is health issues. The moon and the sun are our vitality. The moon rules over the body in traditional astrology. The sun is our life force, it's our solar light. It's literally the heart. So it's like the life force, the energy that we've been given, right? So when the sun and the moon are getting impacted by the eclipses, or when the sun and the moon are a part of it, well, when the sun and the moon are getting eclipsed or are experiencing an eclipse, this can bring about health issues. Okay, it can bring about. So if you are someone that already has heart issues, you have cardiovascular issues, you have high blood pressure, you have back issues, spinal issues, you have issues with your eyes. You need to be very mindful around this eclipse. Okay, you need to be very careful what you're doing. I wouldn't say go to the gym and work out on the day of the eclipse, right? If you already have a heart condition, you don't want to put additional pressure on your heart. You got to think about the eclipse is kind of like an energetic blast from the sun and the moon and from the nodes. It's like a radiation blast. And so that blast of radiation when it hits us, it can cause issues and problems, or it can exacerbate issues and problems that are already present. So it's something that we got to be very, very mindful of. Someone said, my stepdad is a Scorpio rising and he was hospitalized all weekend monitoring his heart rate and blood pressure. Yeah, exactly. See, so once we're in Leo season, right? So as we're approaching the Leo eclipse, we're going to start to see a lot of people with heart issues having an issue, having a problem, or, they can end up in the hospital or something. So we just got to be very mindful of that, okay? Especially if you are getting squared or impacted by the eclipse. So if you have anything around 20 degrees of Leo, this is something that you need to be very mindful of and very careful of, okay? Um, yes. All right. So the other thing I want to talk about the eclipse in general. I want to talk about some other aspects. Okay, so actually before we do that, hold on. So Leo and Aquarius, right? Because y'all are the stars of this eclipse. Relationship life, personal life, your body, your health, your wellness, like you guys are getting hit by the eclipses. But Scorpio and Taurus is also getting squared by the eclipse. And this is something that I rarely see folks talk about, but it is such an important thing to notice or to look out for. The nodal square, the square from the nodes. When you have fixed placements and the nodes they come in to square your placements, okay? So the nodes in Aquarius and Leo are going to be squaring Taurus and Scorpio. The nodal square, the squares from the nodes will have a just as much as an impact on you as if the eclipses were hitting you directly. Okay. If you have your nodes in Leo, Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, if you have the nodes in Taurus and Scorpio, you are literally going through a nodal square. Okay, that's what this is. This eclipse is opening up the 18-month nodal square for you. Okay, it's getting it activated. It's triggering it. Okay. But you want to be mindful of whatever planets you have in Scorpio or Taurus that are getting squared by the nodes, because those are the planets that are going to get activated, or those are the areas of your life that you can experience something hard or something difficult. Okay, so let's say you have, I'm just thinking, okay, I'm going to why not use myself for an example? Let's go ahead and do that. I have Venus in Scorpio at 22 degrees. Okay, this solar eclipse in Leo is going to be squaring my Venus within 2 degrees, right? And it's from the 6th to the 9th. So I'm already seeing how this can show up as issues that I have with clients. This can show up as also health issues, kidneys, hormones, things like this. I don't know. We'll see. And this can also show up as kind of dramatic fallouts in my relationships or my partnerships. So I'm going to be very mindful of what this eclipse squaring my Venus manifests as, or what it looks like, or how it shows up. I haven't taken a deep dive into my own chart to take a look at like how everything is hitting me, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be something like this. I may have a bad experience with a client, or, you know, I may have, or I could meet a lover. I don't know. We'll see. On the positive side, that could bring in a love interest. The square to my Venus, it could bring in some kind of love interest or some kind of romantic thing could get activated for me. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Okay. Also, maybe a visit to the doctor or something, because it's the sixth house, ninth house. So yeah, if you are getting squared, that planet, whatever planet is receiving the square, is going to be activated, and it could be triggered, and there could be something fated or destined that happens associated with that planet. Okay. So you just want to be very mindful of, if you have anything at 20 degrees in a fixed sign, that planet is getting activated by the square, or by a conjunction or an opposition. Okay. Enrico. You guys are so funny. Stuff. I wonder if he's still here. Let's see if he's still here. He don't he probably bounced. Why can't I see all my it says I got like 50 people watching, but I cannot see anybody here. That's crazy. I can only see like a handful of people when I look at the amount of the people watching. Anyways, so yeah, okay. So let's talk about some other features of the eclipse. Okay. I actually really like some of this astrology. I'm gonna be honest. I like some of the astrology from the eclipse. Let me tell you what I like. We have Jupiter at 9, Leo, Mercury at 5, Leo, Venus at 5, Libra. We have Jupiter and Mercury making this beautiful sextile to Venus in the eclipse chart. We also have Venus in a grand trine with Pluto and Uranus. So we have Venus at 5 Libra, trining Pluto in Aquarius at 3, trining Uranus in Gemini at 5. So there's this beautiful grand air trine in the sky as well. So it does look like Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, these three benefics, they are in a good position for this eclipse. So I don't think this eclipse is all bad. I really don't. I think this eclipse is going to bring a lot of opportunity. It's going to bring a lot of open doors. I think it's going to bring new jobs. I think travel experiences, big parties, big celebrations, people announcing future plans or being really excited about future plans, or even people receiving good news in some type of way. I do think this is going to be a theme with this eclipse. I also think that I'm looking at Mercury, Jupiter, sextile Venus, and this is giving me people are deciding to go back to school. People are getting a coach. People are deciding to get a lawyer because they got to go to court. They got to sue somebody. Venus is in Libra, opposite Saturn and Aries. Come on now. All right. There's definitely some court legal stuff going on with this eclipse. Some of y'all, Aquarius, Leos, yes, You have a court date that you're going to be attending in the next 18 months. You're going to have a court battle that's coming up for you. Okay. Because this first house, seventh house axis and the eclipse is getting activated there, right? So this can also be about divorce and separation, especially for Leo Aquarius people. So, and what does divorce separation do? Well, it drags you to court a lot of times, right? So we're going to be seeing some like movement and activity around those things, but it could be beneficial and auspicious. It could be a good thing, right? If you have a court date, this can be because there's insurance money that's owed to you, right? Where someone owes you a lot of money, or you can receive, some nice alimony or some nice child support or something, depending on the situation, right? So I definitely don't think that we should be blind to the fact that there's also really good astrology happening around this eclipse and happening with the eclipse as well, with Jupiter, Mercury making a sextile to Venus. What's so interesting, that's so interesting because I just picked up a paralegal course. Yeah. So the reason why is because we have Jupiter and Mercury, which are the planets of communicate. What is that? I had a daddy long legs crawling on me like 2 days ago. I was like literally on my bed, laying on my bed, talking to my friend. My friend was like, "What is that?" I looked down, and it was a daddy long legs walking at on me, and I like screamed, and I threw my phone up in the air, and I like ran out of my room. Oh my gosh! But yeah, the insects are on the attack over here in LA with all the sun, with all the heat. All the insects are very much alive. But anyways, what I find interesting about Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus, well, Mercury and Venus are at Leo degrees. They're at 5. Jupiter's at a Sag degree. But Jupiter and Mercury, what do these planets have everything to do with? Education, teaching, learning, dissemination of knowledge or the absorbing of new knowledge. These are the things that Jupiter and Mercury have in common, right? So with Jupiter and Mercury co-present in Leo, there's a lot of things around expansion and growth when it comes to education. Also, with Jupiter and Mercury sextile Venus, people can be booking travel, they can be planning future travel. This is also really auspicious when it comes. I typically don't advise, well, I'm not going to make a generalized statement like that, okay? Because everyone's astrology is unique to them, I do not like making general statements like, oh, it's an eclipse, don't travel. I'm never going to say that to you guys. Like, no one should travel because it's an eclipse. That is no, that's not how astrology works. That's actually very bad astrology. But what I will say is Jupiter, Mercury, sextile Venus, we are going to see people going on traveling and vacationing. This is a season for it, especially when Jupiter and Mercury are sextiling Venus. Someone said my sister, who's a Leo, is going through divorce. Yes. And you know what? I'm going to be honest with you, charismatic Frau. I love that for her. Okay. It's probably about time. One of the things that is so interesting about eclipses is that they have us confront situations or they push situations over the edge because it was about time. That thing needed to happen. We've been waiting to pull the trigger on that thing. We've been waiting to make the decision. And you know what happens? The eclipses come around and they make the decision for you. They're like, okay, you know what? This is what you're going to be doing now. You've been twiddling your thumbs. You've been sitting on it. You've been like, you've been indecisive. You've been 2 of swords, 2 of pentacles, right? Guess what? The eclipses come around. You haven't made the choice. We're going to make it for you. Okay. So this is one of the things you always want to remember when it comes to eclipses is sometimes you know, they will kind of push over the domino for a situation that's been waiting to get pushed over, for a situation that's been waiting to unfold. But then the eclipse comes and it finally activates and triggers the situation. It triggers the rupture, it triggers the release, eclipses are very tower card energy, and this is one of the things we got to honor, right? But also when we experience tower moments, when things collapse, what happens a lot of times? In the rubble, there is magic, there's beauty, there's opportunity. There's like we don't realize how the collapse of the tower has been keeping us in prison. It's been keeping us in prison. You know, Someone said, yes, true. It's just an ugly divorce for her, but I know she'll be happier. Yeah, and it's the eclipses are rarely beautiful, peaceful, easy, right? The eclipses, they rush things. They make things chaotic. They make things intense. They overwhelm us, okay? Um, in Vedic Eastern astrology, the North Node and the South Node are considered demonic. They're considered wild, unruly, uncontrollable, dangerous. You know what I mean? Vile, even some would say, right? And so when we're thinking about eclipse energy, we're thinking about this kind of wild, crazy, intense energy that's kind of around. It's in the air and we feel it and we see it. And so it's just something to always be mindful of when we're talking about eclipses or when you start hearing that we're entering eclipse season, just be like, oh my gosh, you know, the monkeys are going to be released from the circus. It's like Jumanji energy. Like eclipses are very much like Jumanji energy. It's like when the game gets opened and all the animals are just like pouring out into like the reality, from the game or whatever. That's how eclipse energy could be. So we just got to be very mindful of how it's hitting us or how it's showing up in our life. But also, not everyone is going to experience a total, life reshuffling, a total reawakening, or a total activation during an eclipse. It the eclipse really has to hit us. And another thing, this showed up in my this kind of question or this observation showed up in my subscriber chat. I think it was yesterday or today. If you have an eclipse on your birthday or within a few days of your birthday, so if you are someone your birthday's August 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, the eclipse signature gets ingrained in your solar return for the year. So that year for you is going to be an eclipse type of year. It's not just the moment for you. It gets locked into the solar return, that eclipse signature, and it's going to be prevalent for you throughout the year. It's even more important for you in that case, right? So if you are someone who's a Leo and you're having your birthday around this time, okay, let's say your birthday is on the day of the eclipse, you want to like take a look at your solar return chart. Go get someone to read your solar return chart. I do solar return readings. So if you are someone, you're having your birthday around this eclipse on the 12th or even the one coming up on the 27th, book a solar return reading with me, okay? I am booked out, no, right now though. So my books are closed. So don't book a reading now, okay? I'm booked out until like October at this point. So I'm trying to figure out more openings, but I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I just don't have. I'm one of me, you know? There's only one of me. But yeah, it's something to keep in mind because that eclipse signature in your birth chart will be very prevalent, will be very prominent, and it'll really echo throughout the year. Okay. So what are one of the things I really love about this particular eclipse in Leo? I think people are launching products. I think people are brainstorming new business ideas. I think people are finding new ways to shine and glow. And I really do think we're going to see a new cast of characters. I think we're going to be seeing new leaders stepping into the public light. I think we're going to be seeing new spiritual leaders. I also think we're going to be seeing a lot of spiritual folks, occult workers, spiritual workers, whatever, stepping into the light, stepping into the light, taking on leadership positions, giving themselves permission to be seen, to be known, to be recognized, right? And this is one of the things I want to tell you. When we have the South Node in Jupiter going through Leo, what do both of these planets have in common? Vedic astrology considers the South Node a shadow planet. So if you ever hear me call the South Node a planet, that's where I'm getting that from. I promise you it's not a mistake, okay? But what do the South Node and Jupiter have in common? These are both planets that love spiritual development. These are both planets that are about detachment and release and surrender. And they are both really rewarding when it comes to spiritual work, when it comes to intuitive work, when it comes to psychological work, when it comes to healing work. Both of these planets, they love when those of us that do that kind of work. We're helping people, we're guiding people spiritually or emotionally, we're helping people figure out their psychology, we're helping people go deeper within themselves, right? We're guiding, mentoring, coaching people. The South Node and Jupiter love this. So if you are someone that is in these professions or you do this kind of work, you can actually experience a lot of benefit from this eclipse. This eclipse cycle, especially with Jupiter and the South Node together in Leo, can be really beneficial for you, right? Um, so yeah, it's something to keep in mind, okay? With Jupiter South Node co-presence, all right? Also, if you are someone that is looking for a job, you're looking to make a career change, you better be putting applications in this week, okay? Also, if you are someone that's already put in applications, go check your email, go check your monster.com, go check your Indeed, go check whatever, just to see if there's any new information, any new updates, anybody reaching out, or anybody returning a phone call or something, because we do have Mercury just went into Leo from yesterday to today. And Mercury is going to be a big player, a very beneficial player with this solar eclipse in Leo because Mercury is sitting next to Jupiter and he's making this beautiful sextile to Venus. Okay. One of the other things, another area of our life that we need to be very open and very receptive to when it comes to this eclipse in Leo for the next 2 weeks is our social life, our relationship life. We have Venus in a beautiful grand trine with Pluto in Aquarius and Uranus in Gemini. This is meeting new people online. This is making new friends. This is making new social contacts. This is new business partnerships, things like this. We got to be very, very open to meeting people from new cultures, meeting people from different ethnicities, meeting people from different backgrounds. Uranus and Gemini, Pluto and Aquarius, they want us to do this. But also the Venus, Uranus, Pluto grand trine, this is about brainstorming new ideas. This is about people coming together to formulate a new business plan or to launch a business together. This is also participation in group activities or joining group activities or being a part of a movement in some type of way. So we may see a lot of people during this eclipse in Leo be called to join a group they may happen into a new friend group. They may want to get more involved with social justice. They may want to get more involved with nonprofit work. They may join an online community in some type of way because that's literally what Pluto and Aquarius and Uranus and Gemini is about. It's about what it's been about has been like online communities and these budding online communities, right? So there's a lot of good stuff that could also happen with this new moon, okay? Or with this solar eclipse that is a new moon. New moons are new beginnings. They plant seeds, they initiate things, they open up doors, they move us forward, right? Full moons are about release and surrender. An eclipse, lunar eclipse is always a full moon. A solar eclipse is always a new moon. Keep this in mind, okay? You always want to remember that, okay? But because it's a solar eclipse and because it's a new moon, it's like we're opening up these doors, we're planting new seeds, we're moving forward in some type of way. One of the other interesting things about this new moon that I kind of don't like, I don't think this planet touching the sun and the moon, even in synastry, is good in any way. It can be. It can be. I'm gonna wait. Let me cancel clear that. It can be because I've definitely seen this particular planet bring longevity and bring commitment and bring like long-term love and stuff like that and devotion and stuff. But the planet that I'm speaking of is Saturn, who just went retrograde in Aries as of not this past Sunday, but the Sunday prior. He's making a trine to the sun and the moon in Leo. And the reason why, okay, I'm gonna give the pros and cons with this. Okay, I'm gonna give the pros and cons with this. I'm gonna start off with the cons though, because that's naturally where I was headed. The reason why I don't like this is because Saturn is fallen in Aries, and Saturn is an enemy to the sun and the moon. So because Saturn is aspecting the sun and the moon, he's kind of harming or he's creating additional damage or he's kind of bringing more conflict when it comes to this eclipse. Saturn in Aries has been incredibly destructive, has been incredibly volatile. We are seeing it in real time why Saturn has fallen in Aries. What Saturn does is he makes the air extra dry. He causes drought. He causes an excessive amount of heat when he's in the sign of Aries. Saturn is a cold and dry planet. When he's in Aries, it's like he gets really hot and really frustrated and irritable, but his dryness is amplified, right? Aries is also a dry sign. Aries is ruled by Mars, which is also a dry planet, right? And so Saturn, he's fallen in Aries, which means he's extra weak in Aries. But how is he extra weak? What does this mean? Just because a planet is weak doesn't mean it's disempowered. And this is something that I was explaining last week with Mars and Cancer. And this is something that we're going to talk about this week when we get to Mars and Cancer. when certain planets are in signs that they're considered you know, they're in detriment or they're fallen or they're considered weak, they actually gain more strength and they become more powerful and they actually become more volatile. And I was using Mars last week as an example, and I was comparing what Mars in Cancer looks like in comparison to, in comparison to Mars in Libra. Mars in Libra is very passive aggressive, is very avoidant when it comes to confrontation. But Mars in Cancer is a more aggressive. We get more of Mars's violence, more of Mars's volatility, more of Mars's kind of like impulsive nature with Mars in Cancer. So Mars in Cancer is not weakened by his presence. Mars is not weakened by his presence of being in Cancer. He's actually kind of strengthened. He actually becomes more volatile, more impulsive, more angry, more frustrated, right? More prone to lashing out, more prone to violence. So his detrimental status or his fallen status in Cancer actually makes him more destructive. And this is something I want you guys to always remember when it comes to the malefic planets of Saturn and Mars. Sometimes they're detrimental or their fallen status in a sign. It's not disempowering or weakening that planet. It's actually giving it more strength and power to carry out its more malefic or troublesome tendencies. So with Saturn in Aries, what do we get? We get fires, we get destruction, we get war, we get violence, we get murder, we get a man on TikTok cutting himself up from head to toe, being fully drenched in blood. That's what we get with Saturn and Aries. The person I'm referencing is Perez Hilton, who is literally going through a Saturn transit. So a lot of the reason why Perez Hilton did what he did is because he's an Aries stellium. He has Sun, Mercury, I believe Venus also in Aries. Saturn is transiting his Sun, Saturn is transiting his Venus, Mercury. Right? So what's being illuminated for him? What is Saturn illuminating for Perez Hilton? Self-hatred, self-rejection, self-neglect, self-abuse. This is what Aries can be about, right? A lot of Aries people, a lot of Aries energy, it's self-destructive. It destroys itself. Aries does itself in. And we see this. Why? Because Aries, Mars, which rules Aries, right? If you put Aries on the rising, what other house does Mars rule if you put Aries on the rising? Scorpio, the eighth house of death, right? So the connection between the first and the eighth when it comes to Aries is why Aries can be very self-destructive and they could lead to their own suffering or they can do themselves in. It's a very common thing. It's one of the things I've noticed as an astrologer when looking at people, especially men that have Aries placements. Men that have Aries placements can be very, very self-destructive and do themselves in, right? So if we're thinking about Saturn's fallen status in Aries, we got to think about how half the world is on fire right now. We got to think about how there's been big abuses of power and authority from the government. Because another reason why Saturn has fallen in Aries, Saturn is a planet of government. Saturn is a planet of rules and regulation. Aries, though, is singular authority, despotic authority, you know? So, the Donald Trumps of the world, right? The Mussolinis of the world, right? The Adolf Hitlers of the world. That's an archetype of Saturn in Aries. It's like a militant leader, a leader that rejects, that rejects democracy, that rejects shared authority or shared power. It's about consolidated power. Aries is about what? Me, singularity, the one. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Aries is a lone wolf, right? So if you put Saturn in there, what do you get? You get leaders that become militant, that become aggressive, that are angry, that become abusive, but that are also selfish. They're more concerned about what they want. They're not concerned with about the collective good, right? This is also why Saturn has fallen in Aries. Why am I talking about this? Because Saturn is making an aspect to the sun and moon for this solar eclipse in Leo. And Saturn is an enemy to the sun and the moon. And how do we know this? Because opposite of Cancer and Leo is what signs? Aquarius and Capricorn. Saturn ruled signs. So Saturn is literally the opposition to the sun and the moon. So because Saturn is aspecting the sun and the moon for this eclipse, what are we likely to see? We're likely to see abuses of power. We're likely to see aggression. We're likely to see men being very violent or very volatile, especially in the realm of relationships. This is something that I think we need to be very mindful of. If you are a woman and if you're in a relationship or if you're connected to men to where you don't feel safe, you need to make sure that, especially if you're around men that have anger problem, if you're connected to a man that has an anger problem, you need to be very strategic and very careful around how you navigate angry men during this eclipse season, especially with this eclipse in Leo. Because the Saturn and Aries aspecting the sun and the moon can literally be about an angry man that attacks you, that gets so frustrated, that gets so mean, that gets so caught up in their own destruction, right? That they destroy themselves and they destroy others as well. And we've been seeing this. We've been seeing this. If you've been watching the news over the last few weeks, there's been these men that have been, their spouse finds out something malevolent about them, that they're a pedophile or that they had a secret lover. And then what did the husband do? Came in and killed the entire family, killed his wife, killed his own kids, and killed himself. I've literally seen this narrative like 4 times in the last few weeks. You know, it's because of the Saturn and Aries. Aries is the sign of men. It's one of the signs of men. Mars rules men, right? So when Saturn is going through Aries, men are going through psychological, emotional issues even more so. We were seeing it with Chiron and Aries, but I really do think that the Neptune, Saturn, and Aries is making it even difficult, making it even worse, or is exacerbating it, or even having them act on it in some type of way. So what I will say is just be very mindful of the Saturn aspect to the eclipse in Leo, and be mindful of these kind of men that are a little dangerous right now, that are self-destructive right now. They're going through a little bit of psychosis. They're going through a little bit of a mental, emotional psychosis in some type of way. People can really lose their minds around eclipses. They do it with full moons. People lose their mind during a full moon. So of course, with an eclipse, Lindsay Clancy. Yeah, I haven't looked much into that, but someone did ask me about that. When will it end? Someone's like, when will it end? Well, this eclipse starts on the 12th, and we're going to be in eclipse season for a month starting on the 12th. So, it's going to go until like the beginning of September, and then with our new moon in Virgo, that's going to be in September, things are going to kind of like stabilize and ground, and that volatility of eclipse energy will kind of dissipate. Okay. The positive of Saturn trining the sun and the moon, though, for this eclipse, the positive is a doubling down of like work and career ventures. Some people will be receiving some kind of reward or recognition. There can be also people that step into a leadership position or get promoted when it comes to this eclipse because of the trine from Saturn. Saturn, the trine is actually a really good aspect, but it's just the fact that Saturn has fallen in Aries. We have an eclipse of the sun and moon. So it's like the sun and the moon and Saturn are all kind of being afflicted at this time, right? An eclipse I would consider the sun and moon afflicted during an eclipse, right? Or that they're being afflicted. So you just got to be mindful of this. Boundaries can also be an important thing that comes up in the realm of relationship or even with family with the Saturn aspect and the sun and the moon. This is also Saturn's retrograde. This is also an eclipse that's having people think about their career direction. Saturn retrograde aspecting the eclipse. Am I building what I want to be building? Am I moving in the direction of legacy that I want to be moving towards? Is my work meaningful, purposeful? Do I feel like I am getting the accolade, the support, the recognition that I deserve in my career? Is there opportunity for forward advancement at my job? This eclipse could be asking people some very prominent questions because and where it's like Saturn, aspecting the sun and the moon with this eclipse, asking them like, wait a minute, where are you putting your time? Where are you investing your energy? Is that career direction even what you want, or do you want something else? Do you want something different for yourself? So I think that's something that we also need to be very mindful of, or we need to be aware of, and that's also some of the positive that could come from the Saturn aspect to the new moon, or to the new moon eclipse that's coming up in Leo this week. So yeah, it's a solar eclipse in Leo on the 12th. Okay. There are traditions, there are cultures that say to not look at the eclipse because it's bad juju. But I know a lot of people are going to be looking at the eclipse, and there's going to be pictures of the eclipse everywhere. It's also, I think, the one of the longest eclipses that we're going to have. I think it's a 6-minute eclipse. So it's gonna be hanging around for a while. If you're like on the European peninsula or whatever, I think you'll be able to see it. Okay. Very powerful eclipse. Just surrender to the change. Whatever is meant to happen is meant to happen. We're gonna be seeing a lot of losses. I'm gonna tell you this right now. So we're gonna be seeing a lot of people pass away. We're gonna see, especially the Pluto and Leo generation. Okay, the Pluto and Leo generation, that's like Trump and all of them. So the Pluto and Leo generation dates, let me see, Pluto and Leo. They were born from 1939 to 1950, or 1937 to 1958. Okay. Um, so that age range, 1937 to 1958, if you have ancestors, or if you have family members that have Pluto and Leo, you just kind of want to see what's going on with them, with their health, especially if this eclipse is hitting them in any type of way. You want to just be very, very mindful of what's going on with them, what's going on with their health, how they doing. Check in with them, okay? Because many of them are going to be experiencing a health crisis, or this eclipse in Leo is going to kind of open up a door or begin a story for when it comes to their health and their wellness and stuff. It's going to challenge them a little bit. It's because of the South Node going through Leo. It's also Jupiter there, but it's also Pluto in a sign-based opposition to them, right? So the Pluto and Leo generation, they're going through their Pluto opposition with Pluto and Aquarius now. So that's just something you want to be aware of. If you have, especially if you have any, what's actually the late degree ones. So it's actually like the late degree Pluto and Leo generation that could be impacted by this. Early degree too, but there's Jupiter and Mercury at the early degrees of Leo. So that's kind of beneficial. It's kind of good. So yeah. Okay. Well, let's move on. We've been talking about the eclipses now for about an hour, for about an hour. So I think that's good. I think we gave a good amount of time and energy to the eclipse. Someone asked how the eclipse was for Capricorns. I will do my best to do, yeah, you're the Pluto and Scorpio generation. I'll do my best to kind of do like light horoscopes for the eclipses. I can't make any promises on that though. I do have a very busy week ahead of me. And I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. We're gonna transition right now. We're gonna talk about the Mercury, Jupiter, Venus. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because I already talked about it kind of during the eclipse, during my eclipse overview. But hold on. Jupiter, Mercury, let me write this down. Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus. I want to talk about what's kind of like auspicious astrology that's happening this week. Okay. Um, I haven't been really feeling social media. There's been a lot going on in the Astro community with like Stephen Forrest, who is the founder of Evolutionary Astrology. I watched the podcast episode, by the way, but he did a podcast episode where he dropped the N word, and he was just saying racist things in a way that was very ignorant. And what was so disturbing, I guess is the word, about the podcast episode was that it was literally about shadow work, and it was about like the shadows of our own consciousness, like how we're blind to the things within us a lot of times, right? And so it's so fascinating how he chose race. He chose race as a topic, okay? And then when he was talking about race, everything about the conversation from start to finish was just so bad. And it really showed how he lacks education around race, but also ignorance is no excuse. If we are not educated on something, especially on a topic that is very sensitive, such as race, and if we're a white man and we're going to be talking about race, we better go ahead and do our research. We better go ahead and make sure that our talking points are clear, and we better be mindful of the speech that we're using, and we got to be very delicate with the subject, right? So yeah, it was definitely his shadows talking, but the whole online astrology community space has just been up in arms about this, and there's been a lot of arguments, and there's been a lot of just like conflict, and there's just been a lot of tension, especially with the Pluto and Leo generation, like the elders within the astrology community that are going to the defense of Stephen Forrest, and there's like the youth and kind of like the new astrologers that are a little bit more politically aware, and they're like, wait a minute, this is not okay, we cannot be permitting this behavior. So it's caused a lot of rupture astrology in the astrology community, and it's kind of that's why I haven't been really wanting to post or be present on social media, just because there's so many people just fighting and arguing right now, and it's just like it's such a, I don't know, it's just negative, it's very negative. But I will do my best. I can't make any promises, but I will do my best to give you guys some insight into the eclipses and how they're going to be impacting you, okay? But I'm going to be honest with you. There is millions at this point of other astrologers online that are doing really great work, and they're even doing really simple, simple yet prominent posts associated with the astrology, okay? Associated with the eclipse and stuff. So, don't let me be your only astrology resource, okay? Definitely, I think, it's nice to have at least a good 3 or 5 astrologers that you kind of tap into regularly, because we all have something different to donate. We all have something different to say. Some of us have strengths in certain areas where others of us have weakness in other areas, So it's nice to have a nice team of social media astrologers that you're following, so you can go ahead and get your information from all of us. So if one of us doesn't give information on this, maybe another of us will. So yeah, okay, let's move on, because I'm not trying to be here for 5 hours like I was last week. Like, we're not going to do that this week, okay? So let's talk a little bit about Mars and Cancer. Oh no, actually, I wanted to do Jupiter, Mercury, Venus. Okay, let's do that. Hold on, let me update the time. So I want to hone in on the astrology that's happening this week with Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus. Mainly because I think that this astrology is extremely beneficial. So let me explain what's happening, okay? So as of yesterday, August 9th, Mercury has gone into the sign of Leo. All right. Yeah, literally yesterday. Mercury's at 0 degrees Leo. He's been in Cancer for the last like 9, 10 weeks. He had a retrograde in Cancer, and he's just been kind of sitting in there. So, with Mercury, the planet of communication, the planet of work and jobs, the planet of routine, Mercury, the planet of the mind, the planet of decision making, of choices. With Mercury ingressing into Leo, we're going to see a lot of people this week kind of making big choices or making big decisions, or people even moving towards opportunities, people changing their routines, changing their habits, people getting back to work in some type of way. So maybe they a bit that messy Mercury retrograde in Cancer, they let go of healthy habits or a healthy routine that they were doing, and now Mercury's moved into Leo, and now they're feeling empowered and inspired, and now they're like, hey, I want to go ahead and do this, I want to do that. But also Mercury's ingress into Leo. So Mercury, he goes from 0 degrees Leo this week, and he by Sunday he is at 12 Leo. He's at 12 Leo. So Mercury is going to make a conjunction with Jupiter on Saturday, the 15th. And Mercury is going to make a sextile to Venus from Thursday to Friday of this week. Jupiter and Venus are the benefics. They're the bringers of opportunity. They are lucky. They are fortunate. They bring wealth. They bring money. They bring connection. They bring opportunity. They move us forward. So, what I will say is this is a week, especially Friday, Saturday, okay, where we are going to see many people kind of moving forward or make important decisions, or there's going to be opportunities that kind of come their way that tell them, hey, come over here. This is where you got to go. This is the next step. This is the next part of your journey. Another thing I will say is because we have Mercury Jupiter together, this can also, and also Mercury sextiling Uranus, Mercury's opposite Pluto and Aquarius. We got this whole thing with Mercury. Um, this can also be about jobs that are different or unique or foreign to what we've done before. One of the things that I've been seeing a lot, this has just been coming to me intuitively, is I've been seeing people move away from their home or move far for a job or relocate for a job. Okay. And I do believe that we're going to see some of that this week. I think some of the job opportunities or some of the ways that people want to expand or grow or some of the leaps of faith that people want to take, it does feel like it's going to take them far or take them distant or it's going to remove them from their comfort zone, the things that they consider safe or secure, the things that they even consider stable. Okay. Someone said good transits for litigation. It really depends on your particular chart, but there are people going to court. Okay. There are people, I was talking about this with the eclipse. There's literally people that are going to be going to court and there's going to be legal matters that are going to happen. And it has a lot to do with Venus and Libra. Okay. Um, also making an opposition to Saturn and Aries. So this is where we're going to see like a lot of divorce and separation. We're going to see a lot of people suing big governments or suing the government or suing big institutions. Like they're suing the business they worked for, They're suing their city government, They're suing like a big institution because of the Saturn in Aries opposition to the Venus. So the Venus and Saturn sign-based opposition is why we're going to see kind of people taking on these bigger institutions and stuff like this. But anyways, with the Venus and Libra sextiling the Jupiter and Mercury in Leo, this is like expansive, auspicious, lucky, opportunistic. Also, a lot of the good opportunities, a lot of the good stuff that's going to come into our life is also going to come through new connections or new relationships or new social groups that we're a part of. So this is a really good week to like join that Facebook group, like show up at the community meeting, like go to the farmer's market, like if there's a job fair being hosted, show up at the job fair. This is a super good week to make new connections and new connections that could be auspicious, that can bring us money, that could bring us a job. Also, this is a really good week to reach out to bosses and leaders that you've worked with in the past. So if you are someone that's looking for a job, and if you've worked with someone in the past that really liked you, it's a good week to reach out to those people just to see if they have something for you or just to see if, yeah, they can give you an opportunity or whatever, right? Or if they could connect you with someone that can give you an opportunity. So, I really do like the Venus, Jupiter, Mercury contact this week. Okay. What this does open up the door to, especially when Jupiter and Venus are in a sextile, this also opens up the door to overindulgence, overconsumption, doing too much of things, falling too quickly in love with someone. Some of y'all are going to be meeting someone this week that is like, that you're like, oh my God, this is my soulmate, this is my partner, oh my God, this is the person I want to be with, I've been waiting for this person, right? But be temperate, be patient, you know, um, be mindful of timing. Sometimes when Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus are all like touching each other in a sextile, it's like really exciting. It's very magnetic. It's very like, Jupiter and Venus are very excited. Jupiter is especially, Jupiter and Mercury are excitable planets. And so, they can be so excited that, they kind of jump the gun or they kind of just like overdo it. So you just got to be very mindful of this energy, okay, with Jupiter and Mercury in a sextile to Venus this week, okay? But key dates, beautiful dates. Good auspicious dates this week when it comes to the Jupiter, Mercury, Venus thing that I'm talking about right now are Friday, August 14th, which is the day that Mercury and Venus are actually going to be sextiling each other, and then Saturday, the day of our Jupiter Mercury conjunction. Okay. Really good auspicious days this week. All right. All right. So let's talk about the next thing that I want to talk about, which is Mars in Cancer. So, Mars in Cancer. So Mars has been in the sign of Gemini, which is, which has been having people argue and fight online and social media. People's speech has been a little bit more aggressive. There's also been like slipping of the tongue. People have just been saying things that they haven't been running through a filter. So that now that Mars in Cancer, it's funny how Mars comes into Cancer right as Mercury leaves Cancer. So Mars is going to be in Cancer from August 11th until September 27th. So we're gonna have Mars in Cancer. It takes him about 2 months to go through a sign. It's about like it could be anywhere from like 8 weeks to 10 weeks. Sometimes it's even shorter. Depends on where Mars is at and what he's doing. Once he starts slowing down to retrograde, he can literally be in a sign for like 5 to 6 months. Your first date on Saturday? Yeah, I'm happy for you. This is really good weekend to go on a date. This is a really good weekend to do something fun. We'll go over that when we talk about the astrology of the week and we go by play, okay? When we at the very end when we cover the weekly astrology, okay? We'll go more into that. But anyway, so Mars in Cancer, right? Mars is going to be in Cancer from August 11th until September 27th. Mars is fallen in the sign of Cancer, which is where he gets very destructive and becomes very temperamental and things like this. So Cancer, why is Mars fallen in Cancer, right? Let's talk about it. Well, Cancer is a sign of home. Cancer is a sign of family. It's a sign of children and babies. Cancer is what we have to protect, is what we feel safe in, right? Cancer is our sense of comfort. It's our sense of security. It's our sense of stability. Cancer is our home life, our domestic life, right? It's like who we are in private. It's our mother, it's our relationship with our mother, it's our lineage, it's our ancestry. Like Cancer is all these things. So then we put Mars, which is the god of war, the planet of fire, the planet of destruction, the planet of individuality. We put him in Cancer. So if you think about this, what is this kind of like? This is kind of like catching the house on fire, you know? This is kind of like spanking the baby, physically hitting the baby, right? We can see how Mars in the sign of Cancer, putting those together can create a lot of problems and create a lot of issues. Okay. So one of the things I will say is with Mars in Cancer, with Mars going into Cancer this week, tomorrow on the 11th, we just got to be mindful of our temperament being a little bit more prone to anger or rage or even being a little bit more defensive. Okay. Mars in Cancer gets triggered when it has to protect or defend something. Mars in Cancer is like the mama bear placement. If someone has Mars in Cancer, you never go for their family, you never talk about their kids. They're very, very protective. They're a guard when it comes to their family, and they will fight for their mother, they'll fight for their kids, they'll fight for their family, they'll fight for the things that are emotionally important to them, things that they have emotionally invested in. So if we think about Mars in Cancer, we want to think about kind of like how Mars can become a fierce protector, but also how he can become very volatile, very aggressive, and very emotionally destructive when he's in the sign of Cancer, right? So what I've noticed with people that have Mars and Cancer is they tend to be a little bit more emotionally impulsive. They tend to lack emotional regulation. They also are quick to anger, but they're also quick to move on. Like once they get angry or mad about something and they vent out all that Martian energy, like they get over it. Or even afterwards, they feel bad and they cry about it. That's another thing. I've seen that before, Mars and Cancer people. They have the hissy fit, they throw the tantrum, they let it all out, and then afterwards they're like crying or they're emotional about it. Or even when they're angry and mad, they're crying. Sometimes that's how Mars and Cancer can also show up. So if we think about this collectively, then what can Mars and Cancer look like for us collectively? This can look like us being more prone to getting defensive, to us getting emotionally triggered, right? To allowing our mother or our family to kind of lead us into emotional distress, right? Or to bait us and trigger us into an argument, into a fight, right? Mars in Cancer brings a lot of brings a lack and a disturbance of domestic harmony. So with Mars moving into Cancer, we just want to be mindful of how we are navigating our emotional realm. We got to be mindful of how we're navigating anger. We also got to be very aware that Mars in Cancer can instigate issues and problems when it comes to the family. Mars loves to trigger family drama. Mars loves to cause fires and loves to kind of cause, conflict when it comes to the family environment, right? So you just got to be very, very mindful of that, okay? Be very mindful of what that the destruction Mars and Cancer could cause. This transit is going to be very significant for cardinal signs. Mars in Cancer from August 11th to September 27th of this year is going to be very significant for you if you have your sun, moon, or rising in Cancer, Capricorn, Libra, or Aries. Okay, Mars is coming in to activate you. And we may see the cardinal signs, they may be more agitated, they may be more frustrated. If you are a cardinal sign, an enemy can appear, if you've been in a tense situation with someone, Mars can trigger the conflict. Mars can trigger a war. One of the things that, the dates I want my cardinal signs to watch out for when it comes to Mars and Cancer, um, I'll tell you right now, the end of the month, like August 28th, going until like September 4th. Yeah. The end of August going into September, beginning of September can be very volatile and very emotional and very destructive. And it could bring some kind of rupturing or something difficult. It could bring an illness. It could bring a fallout with a family member. It could bring an issue with a boss or a leader because Mars is going to square Saturn in Aries. Okay. Mars in Cancer, Columbia's a Cancer, so got oh yeah, everything oh my gosh, the earthquakes and like yeah, that's another thing that we're gonna see is like a lot more volatility when it comes to natural disasters and stuff like that. That is also around the second eclipse. Yes, it is. Yeah. So what I'm looking at around the end of this month, going into next month, so around the end of August, going in September, I'm looking at the Mars Saturn square. So we're going to have Mars at 13 Cancer squaring Saturn at 13 Aries. And this Mars Saturn square goes exact at the end of the month on August 31st. Okay. This can be a rupture point. I'm looking at Venus at 22 degrees on this day as well. So Venus is in Libra. This can bring a rupture point. This can bring a conflict point, okay? Venus and Mars, Venus is in Libra, Venus is transit Libra, Mars is in Cancer. They're both receiving harsh aspects by sign from Saturn. So Saturn is squaring Mars in Cancer. Saturn is opposing Venus and Libra, right? So Venus and Mars, these are planets that have a lot to do with what? They have a lot to do with relationships. They have a lot to do with gender dynamics. They have a lot to do with male-female things. Venus is the planet of women, Mars is the planet of men. So with Venus and Mars kind of experiencing, this month going to next month, these kind of harsh aspects from Saturn, I am expecting cardinal signs, specifically if you have your sun, moon, or rising in Aries, Libra, Cancer, or Capricorn, to experience some kind of conflict or some kind of tension or some kind of delay or some kind of setback or something in their life associated with the Venus in Libra, the Mars in Cancer, and the Saturn in Aries. Okay. This will most likely show up in the realm of relationship and in the realm of family. I will tell you this right now. If you're a cardinal sign, the Mars in Cancer is going to be triggering drama when it comes to the past, when it comes to family, when it comes to things that you're emotionally invested in. The Venus in Libra, opposite Saturn in Aries, can bring about divorce, separation, can show you there's an element of injustice in the relationship, or it could even reveal abuses of power in the relationship, right? So if you are a cardinal person, you have a sun, moon, or rising in a cardinal sign, you have a stellium in a cardinal sign, you really want to be mindful of what Mars and Saturn are doing, what Mars and Cancer will be doing in your chart, how Mars is going to be impacting you or aspecting you. But also Venus and Libra. I think the Venus and Libra is bringing good. I also think the Venus and Libra opposite Saturn Aries, this can also be about literally people getting married. So Venus opposite Saturn is a big transit for marriage and for engagement and also for signing contracts. And so, that could be another thing that is important with Venus's transit in Libra is when she forms an opposition to Saturn, and that's going to be around the end of August. So that's going to be around August 21st, actually. It does look like August 20. Oh, yeah. Yeah. August 21st. Yeah. We have Venus, Saturn opposite each other at 14. So with the Venus, making opposition to Saturn, not only are these two planets forming new contracts, not only are they, getting people engaged, not only are they getting people to commit to long-term things, right? But they're also rupturing. They're also releasing people from karma, releasing people from these contracts, releasing people from burdensome relationships or neglectful relationships that aren't really serving them any longer. So it really depends on what's happening in your life and how you're going to experience this, right? But yeah, Saturn opposite Venus, that's also the reason why I'm bringing this up while I'm talking about Mars and Cancer is because Mars and Cancer has something to say about all this, right? The good thing is that by this time, as we get towards the end of the month, Venus has separated from Mars. So Venus is no longer she's in a sign-based square to Mars, but she's not really getting directly aspected by a square from Mars. There's already about 8 degrees of separation. I'm looking at Friday, August 21st, at the Venus-Saturn opposition at 14. Mars is still at 6, where Venus is at 14. So, Venus has moved past Mars by this time, right? But we do have a little bit of that residual square in the air still. Venus is at 3 Libra. Mars is going into 0. Mars is going to Cancer at 0 tomorrow. So they are separating from each other. They're separating from that square, but they're still kind of in a sign-based square a little bit. So we just got to keep this in mind because the Venus-Mars square can be bringing tension or conflict between men and women. It can be causing some kind of drama or crisis in our relationships where male female relationships, things like this, or even just relationships in general. Venus is the planet of relationships and partnerships. Mars is the planet of individuality, desire. Mars is about separation. So when Venus and Mars are in a square with each other in the sky, this can bring about like tension and conflict. This can bring drama and crisis in the realm of relationships. Okay, but yeah, Mars in Cancer is going to be it can be a little volatile. It can be a little initiating and also be very inspiring though. So that's the other thing is like a Mars transit doesn't have to be violent, it doesn't have to be destructive, it doesn't have to be about, pain, or it doesn't have to be about, fire, right? It can also be about passion. It could be about desire. It can also be about physical activity and physical motivation. So, when we are making the best of a Mars transit, we start going to the gym, we start working out, we start, building out our muscles, we start becoming more independent, more assertive, we get back to activity. So you may feel very inspired and very motivated by this Mars transit as well if you're a cardinal sign. So yeah. Someone said, I'm going to pray for peace with my bosses for the rest of the month because ain't nobody got time for stress. I feel that. That's why I'm my own boss. I don't have to worry about bosses and stuff. She said, LOL, I'm at the gym right now. That's funny. Yeah. So yeah, Mars goes into Cancer tomorrow. Mars is going to be there for a few weeks, from the 11th to the 27th of September. And yeah, we just got to be a little also health wise, because Mars is a planet that loves to inflammation. He loves to make us sick. He loves to hurt us and cause pain. Mars in Cancer will trigger digestive issues. So if you are someone that has dealt with stomach ulcers, if you have IBS or Crohn's, if you get really bad stomach cramps, if you have a dairy thing where you can't drink dairy, just be mindful with Mars's transit through Cancer, because Mars can definitely trigger inflammation. He can exacerbate heat in the body, okay? And he can also make previous health conditions that we already have that we're dealing with worse. So if you're someone and you've been struggling with a stomach ulcer and you've been good, well, Mars's ingress into Cancer can bring more inflammation or can intensify that stomach ulcer, okay? Mars in Cancer is also can bring injury to children and babies. We also have a solar eclipse in Leo. So one of the things Leo is also connected to children. So babies are Cancer. Leo is children, okay? Cancer in the moon rules over babies. Leo rules over children. The age where the transition happens with rulership is 4 to 5. So from 1 to 4, we're ruled by the moon. From 5 onward, we're ruled by the sun, okay? Or 5 to 8 really is like the sun. At 9, Jupiter takes over. So children are going to be a theme this eclipse, and children are also going to be a theme with Mars and Cancer, specifically babies. We got to be vigilant around protecting our kids and protecting our children at this time. If you are someone that has kids, you need to be mindful of what is going on with them, what's going on with them at school. We don't want them doing anything dangerous, anything too crazy during this eclipse season, okay? Um, we don't want them to endure any kind of injury or anything like this. So, we just got to be very mindful. This is all happening, right? We got to think this Mars and Cancer transit, even like Venus opposite Saturn, Mars come to square Saturn. It's all happening within the window of the eclipse season, right? So Leo's a sign of children, Cancer's a sign of babies. Both of these people or both of these segments of society, the children and the babies, they're a little vulnerable. They're a little vulnerable at this time. So we gotta be extra protective. We gotta, double down on our parental duties. What I think about the whole water crisis in Puerto Rico, I think it's terrible. I think it's horrible. I think there's no reason why, they should be experiencing a water crisis. I haven't looked at their chart. But you could probably see it in the chart. I think Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken, I think Puerto Rico has a certain signature in the chart that indicates challenges with resources. Yeah, they're a Leo, so they're getting hit by the eclipses. Yep. Yeah, so Puerto Rico was founded. Oh, this is actually not a good chart though. We have a few different charts for Puerto Rico, so I don't really know which one is the one to take. Yeah, I'd have to do research on that. I'm not going to speak on it unless I have a good chart for Puerto Rico. But more than likely, what's happening, you'll be able to see it in the chart. I'll probably have to do this myself. I'll probably have to research it and do it myself. Well, it's saying July 25th of 1952. So technically, Puerto Rico is a Leo. It's got a Leo stellium. But yeah, they're going through a Saturn opposition too. So I think it has a lot to do with like the water shortage has a lot to do with like misappropriation of resources and things like this as well. Anyways, okay, let's keep going. So I told myself this week I'd be way better at not wasting time by going off on tangents. Or even if I do, we're going to come back real quick. We're not going to sit there 20 minutes on a tangent, you know? I really liked the live that I did not last week, the live I did before. It was very like it was structured, it was timely, it was efficient. Last week's live was a little messy. I wasted a lot of time, and especially in the beginning. And I don't know, it just I didn't like the structure of it. So those of you that are watching, also be mindful of my attention span. Okay, I have ADD a little bit, so I'm very easily taken off subject. So do your best to resist asking me questions that are going to take me off topic. If you're going to ask me a question, let it be on the topic that I'm already talking about, okay? Don't distract me, please. Okay? I'm already fighting for my life over here with my ADD, okay? So it's, being on topic and being efficient in the way I'm delivering information and being mindful of everyone's time is my priority, is my focus, all right? So, yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Mars in Cancer, eclipse in Leo. What else did I want to talk about? I think I think that's it for those two things. Okay. Let's go ahead and transition into the astrology of the week. You ready for another? We're not doing another 5 hour live, okay? That's what I want to prevent. I got a reading. I did a reading exchange with someone, and one of the things they told me was that I need to be more mindful of my energy levels and my time and how much time, just because I have endurance, just because I have stamina, like I could go forever, doesn't mean I have to put myself through that. You know what I mean? So one of the things they told me was like, be more strategic in the way that you are delivering your information and be more aware of time and how much time you're giving to people. And Saturn is gonna reward you greatly for that. You know what I mean? So I'll be right back. I've been drinking tons of water. I'm gonna go use the restroom really quick. We're gonna take a little bit of a break. We're gonna take like a 1 minute break. And then when we come back, we're going to do the astrology of the week. We're gonna do kind of like a play-by-play breakdown of the astrology, and then we'll wrap up there. So it'll probably be another like 45 minutes or so. So, okay, I'll be right back though. I'm gonna go use the restroom really quick. Let me just pause this. How do I pause this? There we go. All right, we're back. Oh, you love your artwork of the novel. That was actually me in a past life. This was me in a past life right here. I really connect to this. Oh, it's someone I did an exchange with. They're an astrologer, and I did an exchange with them. People loving my art in the wall. Oh, I'm glad you guys are loving it. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about the astrology of the week, okay? And this is where we're gonna wrap up. So we're gonna do a play-by-play. We're gonna kind of follow the moon a little bit and speak to the moon and what it's doing throughout the week. So, all right. As of today, the moon is in its waning crescent phase. So it is in its balsamic phase. What did we have 2 weeks ago, roughly now? We had our full moon in Aquarius. So now the full moon cycle is wrapping up and it is going back to new, right? So the new moon this Wednesday is also a solar eclipse in Leo, all right? So when the moon is going through its waning crescent phase, when it's in its balsamic phase, we tend to feel very energetically depleted. The moon is about to go fully dark, right? The moon is dissipating in light. So when we're going through the balsamic phase, as the moon is going through Cancer, it started going through Cancer on Saturday night, I believe. Let me just double check. Hold on. No, yesterday. I keep pressing the same button, but it's the wrong button. That's funny. The moon, let's see, when did the moon go into Cancer? I think it was yesterday morning. Yeah, Sunday morning. Yeah, Sunday morning. So yesterday morning, the moon went to Cancer and it entered its balsamic phase. So the moon's going to be in Cancer today. The rest of today, let's see when it goes into Leo. When does the moon go into Leo? Leo, Leo, Leo. We're doing astrology in real time over here. Yeah, the moon goes in Leo by tomorrow morning around, it's going to be around 3 in the morning Pacific time. The moon goes into Leo on Tuesday. So today we're kind of resting. We're kind of exhausted or drained emotionally. you know, we're realizing that there's certain things that need to shift or change. And then we feel that coming with the eclipse. We know that this eclipse season, we know that what's coming with the future and everything, we know that there's that change is being initiated. We can feel like there's something ending. And I think today with the moon in Cancer, we need to really tend to our waters, our emotional waters, tend to our well-being. How do you nurture yourself? How do you care for yourself? When things are difficult and hard in the outside world, or when things are unstable, how do you get back to safety? How do you create safety for yourself? How do you protect yourself? How do you guard yourself? That's what the moon in Cancer is asking us today. But we could just feel very tired or very exhausted today. Okay. So we just got to be very, very mindful of this kind of, you know, what is it? This kind of, liminal space that the moon is in right now. The moon is, we're not quite at our solar eclipse yet, but we're also at the very tail end of our full moon in Aquarius, cycle that we had, or that full moon Aquarius we had a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. So we just got to be mindful, like moon in Cancer, right? Today, endings, closure, rest, reflection, sensitivity, care, nurturance. Today's a good day for creative ventures, though. Today's a good day to call your mama. Today's a good day to like go out with your kids and have fun, things like this. It's a moon in Cancer day. It's the moon in Cancer from yesterday to today. So tomorrow is when things kind of pick up. Tomorrow is a day that will probably bring good news, or it could bring prominent information, or we might have an important business meeting, or we might have a consultation with someone. It could be tomorrow, Tuesday, or it could be Wednesday going into the eclipse. Because what's happening? Well, the moon, as it goes into Leo, it conjoins Mercury. The moon and Mercury haven't been together in the sign of Leo for a few months now. Mercury just went into Leo as of Sunday. Mercury's been sitting in Cancer. We were talking about that when I was talking about the Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, the auspicious astrology that we're having this week with Jupiter, Mercury, Venus. So with Moon Mercury tomorrow, this can be about important conversations that we have, important paperwork that needs to be signed. This can also be about important interviews or phone calls. Tomorrow could be about interviews and phone calls. There could also, we may have to visit the doctor tomorrow, Wednesday. This could also be about you need to go to the DMV, you need to process some paperwork, you need to get a ticket paid. There's an important decision that you've been sitting on that you need to make. So Moon Mercury could bring that clarity. It could bring that, okay, I got all the information now, and now I know what to do. Okay, like I know what my options are. This is the one I'm going to go with. So just keep that in mind. Tomorrow we have this Moon Mercury conjunction. Okay. One of the things I will say though is Mercury is going to oppose Pluto. Mercury hits an opposition with Pluto directly on the eclipse, I believe. Let me look at this by hours here. No, Mercury's already moved past, but he's tomorrow, or yeah, tomorrow he hits an opposition with Pluto. Yeah, Mercury and Pluto are going to be at 3 tomorrow in a direct opposition with each other. So even though we have this really beneficial moon, Jupiter, moon, Mercury, Mercury, Jupiter stuff going on, there is this kind of counterpoint. There is this opposition that's happening from Pluto and Aquarius that can bring about, so Pluto opposite Mercury can be about disclosure. It can be about hidden information coming to the surface. Can also be about betrayal or deception or loss when it comes to Mercury ruled things. So I do think we are going to see people getting fired or getting let go with this eclipse, and even with the eclipse coming on the 27th, I think that's going to be a theme. But also, we're going to be seeing people make important decisions where they do start something new or begin something new, or they do take on a new job. But I'm just speaking specifically to the Mercury Pluto opposition. Okay, this can be a little intense. Hidden secret information can find us. We can uncover something or discover something um, that gives us clarity around a particular situation. Pluto loves to reveal secrets. Pluto loves to stir up drama. Pluto loves to expose whatever is rotting underneath the floorboards. So when Mercury comes into an opposition with Pluto, Pluto is asking Mercury, okay, what do you want to tell people? Here, look what I've been researching. Hey, look at the detective work that I did. And Mercury, and so Pluto is like the detective handing Mercury, the journalist, the information to go ahead and share with everyone. Pluto's like, oh, I got this story to tell you. Oh my God, you won't believe what happened. I've been doing this research. I've been on a case as a detective. Oh, I got some information for you. I got something that you could tell everyone. Okay. So you want to be mindful of that because as Mercury comes into oppose Pluto tomorrow, there can be some hidden or secret information that comes to the surface. The other thing is the moon is also playing a part of this. So the moon is also with Mercury, and the moon and Mercury are both opposing Pluto tomorrow, right? So that could also be about emotional information that comes to the surface. This can also be about emotional disclosure. Tomorrow can be a day where someone is telling somebody like, "Hey, I really love you, I really care for you. I want to be with you. Let's be together," right? But it can also be about rejection. It could be about, "Hey, you know what? I'm not really feeling this anymore. Hey, I'm not really feeling you. Hey, we need to have a conversation because stuff has been coming up and I got to talk about it." Moon, Mercury, opposite Pluto and Aquarius, right? So is Cat Williams in that Pluto and Aquarius? Is Cat Williams and that Shannon Sharpenter? Yeah, definitely, 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 definitely. Yeah. Disclosure. What did he say? There was a quote where Cat Williams said, he says he knows the value of information and he knows the value of secrets or something. And he was talking about how he's like, I got something on everybody. He's like, when I'm in a room, I'm listening to what people are saying. And you got something for me? You want to tell me something? Because he knows the value of information. Cat Williams. And that's definitely Mercury opposite Pluto. Let's see what this crazy man's got going on in his chart. It's funny because he has Mercury in Leo. And he's a Scorpio rising? Leo rising. Leo rising. He's a Virgo. Yeah, I would never want to get in an argument or a fight with Cat Williams. He has North Node Mars and Aquarius together. Same reason why I wouldn't want to get in a fight or become an enemy of Elon Musk's, because people that have, like, especially when men have North Node Mars together, they will they seek and destroy. They will go out of their way to destroy somebody. They can, go on a war path. It could be a little intense. Yeah, he's an Aquarius moon, Virgo sun. Yeah. He has Sun Venus too. He's actually a nice guy. Cat Williams is a nice guy. He's got Sun Venus together. He can be a really sweet guy. Anyways, let's get back on let's get back on track. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yeah, so with Mercury opposite Pluto, we want to be mindful of, and Moon Mercury opposite Pluto, we want to be mindful of disclosure, important information, secrets coming to the surface, betrayals. You might find something out about your mom. You know, your mom has been lying to you about your daddy, who your daddy is. Oh no! Your mom's like, hey babe, I got something to tell you. Yep, that man, he ain't your daddy. Moon, Mercury, and Leo opposite Pluto, of course. The father thing came from Leo. That's where I got that from. Okay. So yeah. So then the moon continues on Tuesday, going into Wednesday. And so afternoon, hold on here. The moon is gonna hit Jupiter on Tuesday evening around. So this is gonna be around 4 p.m. Yeah, 5 p.m. on Tuesday, tomorrow. Moon and Jupiter hit each other. Someone just said, found out my mom has been hiding her health from me yesterday. We need to be on top of our parents, especially like the Pluto and Virgo, Pluto and Leo generation. They do not like to tell us about what's going on with their health. You got to be on top of it. So, Moon Jupiter tomorrow. This is also a very auspicious. This is very lucky. This is like a really good transit. So, I really do think that people are going to be waking up on Wednesday morning to like some good positive news. But I don't know, it's the day before an eclipse. The moon is coming to conjoin the sun, and then we're having our eclipse. So one of the things I will say is it's gonna be a mix of the good and the bad. I'm a little concerned for grandparents. I'm a little concerned for Jupiterian people, doctors, lawyers, judges, coaches, religious or spiritual leaders. I'm a little concerned for these people because the eclipse is happening so close to Jupiter. You know, it's within 11 degrees of Jupiter, and so we're going to see a lot of Jupiter type of people get hit by the eclipse directly, and it could be either good or bad. So it's going to be a little bit of a mixed bag. The eclipses are very much like I was saying when I was talking about it earlier. They're like a spin of the wheel, like the spin of the wheel. When it comes to like the wheel of fortune, it's like, all right, we're gonna be on the upturn of the wheel, we're gonna be on the downturn of the wheel. I don't know, we'll see, right? So, but yeah, Moon Jupiter tomorrow, really good for education, learning, really good for um, enrollment of classes. If you're someone that, you're looking for a coach or a mentor, or even if you want to like, get a therapist or you want to meet up with your therapist, whatever, Moon, Jupiter, really good for that. This energy is also going to bleed into Wednesday morning. So that Moon Jupiter conjunction is that energy is going to be around for sure. It's very auspicious. It's very positive. Moon and Jupiter come together. This can also be about procreation and pregnancy. There will be some people that are born tomorrow. Your kid just went back to school today. Yeah. Obviously, there's gonna be people that are born tomorrow, but I don't know what I saw with Moon Jupiter. Okay, well, what I saw was like this Moon Jupiter transit, like triggering pregnancy or triggering like the rupture of like a woman's water, like their water breaking or whatever, and them having a baby. Yeah, because Jupiter is about procreation and birth. Jupiter is the great progenitor, so he's the great bringer of life, the great bringer of babies, and things like this. So what I was seeing with Moon Jupiter tomorrow is someone's water breaking and them having their baby just around an eclipse, right? Just before an eclipse. A lot of kids started school again today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's so interesting. Children are a big theme this week. Children are a big theme this week. It's an eclipse in Leo. So, but yeah, so Moon, Jupiter together, really good for procreation, really auspicious for, pregnancy, really good for any kind of teaching, coaching, also any kind of like creative venture. Moon, Jupiter is really good for creative ventures, stuff like this as well. We're also going to be seeing a lot of people this season, they're shifting into entrepreneurial work. They're shifting into working for themselves. they don't want to work for anyone anymore, you know? So if you are being called by the nodes and by Jupiter and by Mercury in Leo to like do your own thing, start your own business, definitely start brainstorming or start blueprinting for that, okay? Because that's what this energy could also be kind of calling forth in some type of way. So then on so then the moon keeps moving forward, and then we get to Wednesday. And Wednesday is the day of our eclipse. And that's when things get a little wild. That's when things get a little messy. That's when things get a little chaotic. You know, it's a solar eclipse in Leo. It's a new moon eclipse in Leo. It's kind of like opening up the door. It's initiating us into the next timeline. One of the things I will say is the nodes tend to warp time and warp reality. The nodes tend to speed things up, especially. They make things go really fast. So we may feel come Wednesday that literally time is speeding up or time is getting away from us. There could be drama, there could be crisis that finds us on Wednesday if the eclipse kind of shows up directly in our life immediately, you know. We can also hear of some kind of big story or kind of big news thing where a leader passes away or there's a fall from grace for a leader or a leader gets overthrown. There can also be big announcements. So that's the other thing is like Mercury announces things, and you know we have Mercury in Leo with Jupiter. You know, the day before our eclipse, we have the moon come into contact with Mercury and Jupiter. So as the moon conjoins the sun for our eclipse on Wednesday, then guess what? This can be about a big announcement. This can be about a big thing that's going to be said, you know. Someone said they have a root canal scheduled on Wednesday. It should be fine, you know. It should be fine. You should be good. Are you going to be put under or no? If you're going to be put under, then I don't think root canals, you don't got to be put under nowadays, you know. They just give you a little bit of laughing gas and you know, but even then I don't even think they do that with all root canals. It depends on how severe it is, right? But you might want to avoid any kind of drugs on the eclipse. I never advise drinking or smoking or going unconscious or partying excessively around an eclipse. If you are someone that, you know, is getting a medical procedure on the day of an eclipse, I wouldn't recommend being put under or going unconscious, okay? The eclipse energy can be a little volatile, a little dangerous when it comes to loss of consciousness. So that's one thing where I would say, you know, if you are able to, if you do have a root canal tomorrow, if you're able to avoid any kind of like any kind of like being put under, okay, it'll be good from that. It'll believe me, it's the safer thing, okay. But yeah, so Wednesday comes, we have our eclipse, and then things kind of get volatile, things get a little chaotic, you know, things get a little unpredictable. We kind of are oh, you're not being put under. Okay, good. Where we kind of are being impacted by the eclipse. And this is where drama and crisis unfold. There could be big announcements by leadership on the eclipse or around the eclipse. So even the days after, there can be leaders that announce they're retiring or they're stepping down, or there could also be big announcements within businesses or corporations where they're like, we're consolidating, we're merging with another business, you know, we're getting rid of these leadership positions, or we're consolidating this leadership department, we're getting rid of this department, whatever. So just be mindful of that. Just be prepared for that because there's going to be a lot of announcements. There's going to be a lot of things, a lot of declarations, a lot of people saying, like, oh, you know, especially people in positions of authority and leadership, people making these announcements around future changes and stuff, you know. Because why? The nodes are shifted into Leo and Aquarius, right? We're going into our Leo and Aquarius eclipses. So this tells us that the cycle of time is changing, right? The nodes are bringing us into a new direction. So we got to follow suit, right? And so with this eclipse tomorrow, be prepared to receive information that can give you insight into what the future looks like. And this information doesn't have to come from a boss or a leader. It could come from anybody. It could come from an email. It could come from a phone call. It could come from a conversation. It can also come from an epiphany. It could come from the divine, you know. So just be mindful of that, okay? And be open and receptive to that, all right? The eclipse is at a Scorpio degree, so it's definitely about transformation and change. It's about the shedding of egos, the shedding of identities. The shedding of the old self and the birth of the new self is really what this eclipse in Leo is kind of heralding, okay? So then the moon continues to move forward and things get a little like the moon's got to hit the south node, you know? The moon's got to hit the south node, and the moon's going to hit the south node on Thursday. So as the moon goes into Virgo and hits the south node on Thursday, yep, I'm looking at Thursday, 5 a.m. Pacific time. The moon is conjunct the south node in Virgo. That's when we may hear of like a significant loss or a significant ending or something. Okay. So on Thursday, we might wake up Thursday morning with some information around like a collective loss or a collective tragedy, or there may be something really intense that gets announced Thursday morning as the moon is in Virgo at the south node. Some people will be finding out this Thursday that they are not going to be working at a job any longer, or that they're going to be getting a new job, or that they're going to be getting promoted, or that something's going to be shifting or changing with their department. That's something that we're going to be seeing with the moon in Virgo. The moon in Virgo is responding to Mercury, who just went into Leo as of as of this past Sunday, right? As of yesterday. So I do think the moon in Virgo transit is going to be very stimulating, is going to be very informational. I think it's going to be very busy. I think it's going to bring up issues around anxiety and paranoia. I will say, moon in Virgo, whenever the moon is transiting Virgo, my nervous system is like on edge. Like I'm stressed. Okay. It's my seventh house and it opposes me. But yeah, I get stressed out whenever the moon is in Virgo. And I notice this. I notice that my anxiety levels tend to peak a little bit when the moon's transiting Virgo. So it's coming out of an eclipse. It's the day after an eclipse. The moon goes into Virgo. Be mindful of what's going on with your mind, with your nervous system, with your energy. How are you feeling? What's going on? You may feel very depleted or very exhausted the day after the eclipse. It's a south node eclipse, which will drain and exhaust our energy. It'll deplete our life force. So make sure you are getting rest. The moon south node contact can also have us fall ill or get sick. Be mindful of what you're eating around this eclipse. I would stay away from hot and oily foods. I wouldn't put gold in my food. I wouldn't eat anything that has gold in it. Okay. And also, when it comes to like veggies, and there's been a lot of stories of contamination and what is it called? Cyclospora or something? The word that's been causing people, yeah, cyclospora. Yeah. It's been causing people to have the runs from eating lettuce and eating like contaminated vegetables and fruits or something. So, just be mindful of that. Look out for stories around food contamination or around like yeah, and it's going to be like organic, natural, fresh foods. It's going to be like salads, it's going to be like lettuce, it's going to be like cucumbers and things like that, because of Virgo, because that's what Virgo is about, okay? So, that's on Thursday when the moon goes into Virgo at the south node. Yeah. But at the same token, right? Mercury is in a sextile with Venus Thursday, Friday. The same time, Mercury is coming to conjunction with Jupiter come Saturday. So I don't think it's all difficult, challenging stuff. I think the moon in Virgo transit is also going to be beneficial in some type of way. I think it's going to be directional. It's going to have people talking about, or thinking about what their next steps are, what the future is in store for them. Like, where are they going to go? What are they going to do? Moon in Virgo is also a wonderful transit for cleaning things up, tidying things up, especially with the South Node, it's good for throwing things away or getting rid of things. So if you have like old stuff in your closet, old clothes, you just have, you know, you need to tidy up a little bit, your room or your house is a little messy. Use the Moon in Virgo transit Thursday and Friday to go ahead and do that, okay? Moon in Virgo transit is wonderful for tidying things up, cleaning things up, also fixing things, repairing things. Mercury's in Leo, making a really good aspect to Venus, and he's also being supported by Jupiter. So this Moon in Virgo transit would actually be a really good time to get something repaired or fixed. It'd be a good time Thursday and Friday to take your car in if it needs like, an oil change or if you got to change your tires, something like that, okay? As the moon goes into Virgo, though, it does square Uranus and Gemini. So there is an element of kind of like chaos or instability that may find us emotionally Thursday morning. We could be feeling a little wild or a little erratic. Also, I will say plans can fall through on Thursday. So if you have like appointments set or if you have like something scheduled on Thursday, um, what I would say is call ahead of time just to confirm that appointment and make sure everything is good because the moon Uranus square Thursday morning can bring like a cancellation or could bring a change of plans. Virgo is a sign of like patterns, habits, routines, right? What is scheduled, what is on our calendar. Where Uranus is like, oh, you thought you were going to that? Actually, no, you're not. It's canceled, you know? Uranus brings rupture, Uranus brings cancellations, and Uranus also brings redirection. So there could be plans that shift or change or that are canceled on Thursday, with the moon coming into square with Uranus in Gemini. So that's something that we also want to be a little aware of. Okay. So let me see here. As the moon is going through Virgo, it squares Uranus. And then it's kind of void. It sextiles Mars in Cancer, but the moon is void. It's not making no aspect to any planets. Friday. Just a square to Lilith, but that doesn't really count. Yeah. We have an official void moon on Friday. Like end of Thursday going into Friday, the moon is void. It is not making any aspects to any planets. So the moon being in Virgo and void on Thursday night, Friday can make us kind of feel very empty or very lonely or very isolated. When the moon is void, we can feel a sense of directionlessness, or we can feel a sense of apathy, or we could even feel lethargic. So you just want to be like take notice of what's going on with you emotionally Thursday evening, Friday, as the moon is in Virgo, not making any aspects, not talking to any planets. The moon is just doing its own thing, okay? Because the moon being in isolation can also make us feel like emotionally we're in isolation or that we're unsupported or that we're not getting that like closeness and that intimacy or we're not getting that connection that we need or but it'll just it's a passing moment though, right? Like the moon goes into Libra come Saturday. You know what I mean? And the moon's going to be with Venus on Saturday. So, once the moon goes into Libra Saturday morning, the energy dramatically shifts and changes. And all of a sudden, the moon is with Venus. The moon is going to be moving into a sextile with Jupiter and Mercury and Leo, who are also coming together on Saturday. So we do have a Jupiter Mercury conjunction in Leo on Saturday. It's at 10 degrees, which is a Capricorn degree, which has everything to do with like work and career and ambition. And like, I don't know why I was seeing business meetings or I was seeing like people come together to talk about a business venture or something. Like I saw that right away when I was talking about Moon Jupiter at a Capricorn degree on Saturday. So with the moon going into Libra on Saturday, it kind of brings us out of this like void moon that we experience from Thursday evening into Friday. Um, it brings us out of this like energy of like maybe loneliness or isolation or maybe even disconnect or even maybe just apathy. And when the moon goes into Libra, all of a sudden Saturday, moon Venus together, it's like romance, it's like love, it's social connection. Jupiter Mercury together, let's go out and party, let's go celebrate, let's go do something fun, right? And honestly, Saturday night, Sunday, these are good days. Saturday night is a good evening to take someone out, to get to know someone, to go on a nice date with somebody, to do like a love romance thing. It's Moon and Libra with Venus. Also, this will be a weekend where people are shopping, people are spending money, people are doing things that are elegant, people are doing things that are fun. People are kind of like, they're building social clout this weekend. It's Moon and Libra with Venus. It's also Moon moving into a sextile by Saturday evening with Jupiter and Mercury. So This weekend seems to be very fun, very exciting, very romantic, but also the energy of social justice, also the energy of rebellion, also the energy of kind of standing up or resisting authority figures and leadership people, you know. So that's also going to be something this weekend that's in the air. We may see some kind of rallies, we may see some kind of protests this weekend with the moon in Libra. You know, Libra is a sign of justice, right? The air signs, Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius, are very concerned around what's happening in the world. You know, they're very concerned with the state of humanity. They're very concerned with, you know, how the social environment is shifting and changing. So crazy. Someone said crazy. I have an appointment to take my notary exam on Thursday, but will need to reschedule due to an illness. And Saturday is my grandson's first birthday party. Oh, everyone's gonna be dressing up so nice. It's a great day to celebrate a child actually on Saturday with Jupiter, Mercury in Leo together. There's also gonna probably be really fun activities there. There's probably gonna be games and activities that everyone's gonna be doing, you know. But yeah, so Moon in Libra, you know, this is the sextile from our solar eclipse in Leo that we had on Wednesday. So this is kind of like auspicious. This is good. I really don't think that this eclipse is going to be as negative or volatile as other eclipses that we had. I think this eclipse is really going to propel people forward in ways that they have been maybe resisting or ways that they've been maybe unsure, insecure about. I think this eclipse is going to confirm a lot of people's path. I think this eclipse is going to remind people that they are more than the environment that they're surrounded in. They're more than their family. They're more than their friendships. They're more than the life that they have, you know. They're capable of more. They want more. They desire more. Because Jupiter and Leo is asking us these questions. It's not just an eclipse, right? With like Sun, Moon, and Leo. No, it's also Mercury and Jupiter in Leo. What do I want for myself? Where am I going? What do I need to change with my routines? What do I need to change with my patterns so I can get to that thing that I want, you know, so I can become that person I want to become, right? So I think it's really important that we don't get too caught up in the negativity of what an eclipse is. Yeah, negative. Yeah, yeah. Eclipses are hard. Yeah, eclipses are difficult. Yeah, eclipses put us through karmic situations. But I also believe that with the astrology, this week, there's very positive things that are also happening in people's lives. There's like really good, auspicious, lucky stuff that can happen for people. That's very opportunistic, that's very blessed, that's very divinely ordained. That's like, hey, spirit is like, I got this gift for you and only you know? So I think it's important that we lean into that and that we are open and receptive to what the new stuff is that's entering our life. Where is Jupiter calling us to expand and grow? Who does Mercury want us to talk to? Who does Venus and Libra want us to partner with, right? Want us to marry, want us to commit to, right? So I think it's important that we don't get too caught up in the negativity of an eclipse moment. We still have to, you know, with this particular eclipse especially, we still have to keep in mind that there's very good auspicious astrology also happening at this time, you know? So it's not all bad, right? Yeah. Okay. So going back to Saturday, Moon in Libra. Okay. Moon's gonna be with Venus on Saturday. The one thing that could be hard about Saturday though, we could wake up a little bit with a little frustrated, a little irritable, or you know, this could also be an argument at the party, or this could be an argument before we leave for the party, you know. We are gonna have Moon square Mars in Cancer on Saturday morning. It's actually around Saturday. Yeah, Saturday morning. Let me go back. We're gonna have Moon Square Mars. That's around 11 a.m. Pacific time on Saturday. So with the moon squaring Mars, this could be about, you know, moon square Mars can be about arguments or fights. You know, moon square Mars can be about, you know, someone getting emotionally triggered by something and overreacting. So just be mindful of Moon in Libra, Mars in Cancer. Are we going to keep the peace, Moon in Libra, or are we going to like fight and argue about something that we care about, Mars in Cancer? That Moon square Mars transit Saturday morning can be a little triggering. So, okay, you've been warned, all right? But then we get the peace and the love and the harmony of Moon hitting Venus, you know, later on in the day. So by Saturday evening, the moon is with Venus by 10 o'clock Saturday night, you know? So there's also that really good positive moon Venus contact. But then the moon kind of moves on a little bit. She's also making a sextile to Jupiter and Mercury, which is wonderful. We love that. So Saturday evening looks like a really good evening. But then the moon continues to move. And what's the next planet that the moon's going to come into contact with? Saturn in Aries. Oh, yeah, that's people going to church on Sunday. Some people are going to a very old church on Sunday. Some people are going to be visiting a grandmother or a grandfather, or they're going to be hanging out with an elderly person on Sunday. Some people will also be getting emotionally rejected, or they will be let down by someone, or someone could be a no call or a no show on Sunday because of the moon Saturn opposition. Saturn kind of brings the energy of rejection or disappointment or blockages. You know, Saturn can block things. We can also feel a little irritated or frustrated on Sunday with the moon opposing Saturn in Aries. It's like war or peace, you know? Do we have to stand up for ourselves? Do we have to call out an injustice or something like this, you know? My poor Libra moon keeps getting beat up by Saturn. Yeah, oh yeah. I have quite a few Libra clients, Libra moon clients that are going through the most with not only their health, but also some of them with love. They're going through like a divorce or separation, or they're leaving a partner behind because that's what Saturn opposite the moon is like a checkpoint for all moon things. Your relationship life, your emotional life, your family life, you know. But it's hard though. It's not a fun or easy checkpoint. It's a very difficult checkpoint because, you know, Saturn does a lot of harm to the moon a lot of times, right? So, but yeah, moon in Libra. I'm looking at what time is this? 10 a.m. Sunday. I'm looking at moon at 14 Libra opposite Saturn and Aries at 14. Okay. And so that moon Saturn opposition can really be a downer. All right. It could be a little bit of a downer. But also, Sunday could be a day that's really good for responsibility, for obligations, for getting stuff done. You know, Sunday is going to be a very busy day for some folks because of Saturn. Saturn is giving them some kind of work to do. You know, moon Saturn stuff can be about you have an obligation you have to take care of. There's a big responsibility. You know, someone needs your help, someone needs your support on Sunday. So that's just also something that we want to keep at the forefront of our mind for Sunday, okay? And then that brings us to the end of the week. The moon is going to go into Scorpio on Monday. And then that's when things get a little dark. That's when things get a little tumultuous, my loves. I think we should really enjoy the peace of this weekend because then when the moon goes into Scorpio on Monday of next week, the moon is going to be in Mars's sign. And Mars is in Cancer now. The moon's going to oppose Chiron and Taurus. You know, Jupiter and Mercury are approaching the sun. So, well, actually, no, Jupiter's not going to approach the sun. Jupiter is not going to hit the sun. Mercury's approaching the sun, you know? I'm going to have that moon Saturn aspect in my solar return chart. Oh, that's going to be rough. Yeah. I have a client that has moon Saturn conjunct in their solar return chart for this year. And I want to tell you how this manifested because it already manifested. So it was literally the day of their birthday that moon Saturn were conjunct. So it's in their solar return chart. The day after their birthday, they end up getting into an argument with their spouse. Their spouse moves out all their stuff and moves into their own place. The day after their birthday. Because why? Moon Saturn, right? Moon is a planet of home and family in our domestic situation. Saturn is a planet of karma, but it's also the planet of boundaries, and it's the planet of, you know, the releasing of contracts, you know, and it can bring some kind of karmic resolve, but also some kind of karmic hardship associated with moon things. Aries is the sign of separation and individuality. Aries is like what I want. Libra is relationship. Aries is me. Libra is us. So if we think about Saturn conjunct the moon in Aries in the solar return chart, what is that? What could that look like? Well, that could literally look like the breakup or the separation of someone who's married, and that's literally how it manifested, right? The day after their birthday, that moon Saturn conjunction in the solar return chart went to work. And it was like an argument, it was a fight, it was a moment, it was a chaotic kind of like tower moment, right? So we just want to be mindful of that with this weekend, um, when the moon opposes Saturn on Sunday. What day did I say? Sunday morning around 11? Yes. Yeah, Sunday morning around 11. Yeah. Someone asked, do you think that Moon Venus conjunction will do anything to help, or would it be overpowered by? Oh yeah, definitely. Moon Venus will definitely help. Yeah, it'll definitely alleviate the more problematic manifestations of Moon Saturn. Yeah, Saturn loves Venus. So Saturn and Venus, they really like each other. And Saturn, even though Saturn does cause a little bit of harm to Venus, Saturn actually gets really propped up and supported when he's being aspected by Moon and Venus. Yeah, you know. So if you have Venus in on the mix there, that can literally be about like Moon, Venus, Saturn can literally be about purchasing of a property, like buying real estate. you know it can also be about purchasing of a luxury property, or it can even be about buying a new car, buying a luxury car. It can be about investing in real estate, investing in business. It could also be about a career change, working advancement in work or career. Venus really does well there. Venus really, she's a little harmed by Saturn, but because she's with the moon, and because Saturn and Venus are like planets that get along, they like each other, Venus can really totally shift how that moon Saturn will show up in your solar return chart. If you want more detail about it, though, you should definitely book a reading with me. As of now, I'm booked. My calendar is not open. Um, we got to this. The day came, my loves. I'm used to being booked out. I'm used to being booked out about like a month. I'm used to being booked out about 2, 3 weeks a month. But being booked out like 2 months and like being overwhelmed with people requesting readings, that's kind of new to me a little bit. I go through phases where that happens. But yeah. You sent a request for October? Yeah, well, I'll see what I can do, my loves. I'll see what I can do. I gotta be very mindful of, I'm a Pisces rising and I'm a Neptune person. So I gotta be very mindful of like my energetic battery and like my ability to like help in like work, like I burn myself out. This is something that I've been working on for the last 5 years, and it's something that I've been going through for a long time when it comes to my work here. Is I go through cycles of burnout. So I work really hard, I produce tons of content, I get really busy, and then eventually I burn myself out, and then I come crashing, and then I need like a month or two off, and then I pick back up and I get going again. So what I'm working on is trying to find, what is balance look like for me? What does balance look like for me? What does a balanced work life thing look like for me? And how many readings can I do sustainably to where I don't drain and exhaust my psychic intuitive senses? Because that's the other thing, right? I'm not, so if I was just like an informational astrologer, and I wasn't using like my psychic intuitive senses to do readings, I can do a lot more readings because I'd just be like, processing the information and getting people in, and it'd be like that. It'd be just, like people coming in through a revolving door and me just pushing readings out, and right. But that's not the way I do readings, and that's not the way that's not my relationship with astrology. I'm psychic, I'm intuitive, I like see things, I get downloads for people. Like I get and it requires a lot of energy. Like when I'm doing a reading, I get hot and I start sweating because there's so much energy that I'm like channeling, you know? So it's not just about the informational experience of getting a reading by me, but it's also understanding that I'm also channeling, you know? I'm a oracle, you know? I'm a diviner. So I'm using my intuitive psychic senses to also give information. So it's not just informational reading. It's not just, left brain, logical energy that I'm using. No, I'm using psychic, intuitive, spiritual energy too, which is why readings deplete me so much quicker. I have a lot of stamina. I do around anywhere from two to three readings a day. But even then, like if I do three readings a day, oh, by the third reading afterwards, I'm like drained. I'm like tapped out. I have like no energy. And it's not even like a physical thing. It's more of like a mental, emotional thing. It's more like like my mind just feels tired. My emotional body feels like exhausted, right? So, yeah, so I've had to be very intentional with how I manage my own energy and how I navigate that boundary between myself and work, because I used to burn myself out and get tapped out back in the day. I've gotten a lot better. I've worked on it the last few years. I've gotten a lot better at preventing that from happening. But yeah, I don't want to go ahead and just fully load up my calendar for the next 5 months where I have like, back-to-back readings every like it's going to take me away from my social media content, which is something that I've been really working on. And it's going to really put me into a state of imbalance. And then I get really resentful, and I get really start getting angry and I start getting frustrated with my work, and I don't want to put myself in that position ever again. I don't want to be like that anymore. So yeah, so I know I'm so grateful that so many of you want to connect with me and so many of you want a reading with me, and I'm grateful that you guys see the value of my work and that you guys, understand that I have a particular talent with this, but I also, I'm a one man army, you know what I mean? So um that's why Spirit has been showing me like the importance of kind of like getting into teaching and or even just doing workshops where I show people how to do readings the way I do readings, so that if there's someone, so I can refer people out if I need to, or so that I can have like a team of people that do readings and understand the astrology and stuff like that the way that I do it. You know what I mean? There's not enough intuitive astrologers. There's not enough astrologers that are working with their intuitive psychic senses, which is why many astrologers tend to struggle with accuracy and tend to struggle with prediction because they're not combining the wisdom and the knowledge of astrology with their intuitive senses. So, that's when the magic of astrology really comes to life. That's when you are able to do extremely accurate, detailed predictions. It's when you are merging your left brain and your right brain and you're using them together to do divination or to do intuitive work or whatever. That's when the magic of astrology really comes to life. You know what I mean? So I endorse them, and someone said I endorse a monopoly. So true. I'm doing readings and I'm finally setting boundaries on the energy. Yeah. Yeah, so I just have to be very mindful. And I'm going on vacation. I need a vacation. I've been needing a vacation. That move took a lot out of me. The move from Portland to LA, that was a big move. And there's still a lot of questions like that I have. And I don't know if I'm here at my parents, but you know what I mean? Like I love living by myself. I love being on my own, and so I'm going to be figuring that out when I come back from Egypt. I'm going to be gone. So I'm leaving for Egypt on September 3rd of next month, and I'm coming back on the 22nd, I believe, either the 21st or the 22nd. So I'm going to be visiting the pyramids. I'm going to be at the Nile. I'm going to be going to the Siwa Oasis. I'm going to be visiting quite a few temples in Egypt. I am super excited. I'm in very much need of this vacation. Um, I haven't taken a vacation all year, I think. I think it's been, yeah, all year I haven't been on a vacation. So I need that break. I need that break. you know? I do. I look at astrology. I look at charts all day, every day. Like, I don't think some of you understand just how many charts I be looking at throughout the day. And so this is why a lot of times when people send me a chart, like, okay, look at this chart. Oh, this celebrity went through something. I'm just like, I don't even have the energy, you know? I don't have the energy to like look at that. I'm busy working with people's charts in real time every day, you know what I mean? And stuff like that. So, yeah. But yeah, so we end the week with the moon in Libra and we wake up on Monday morning, or actually the moon's still going to be Libra Monday morning of next week on the 17th. But the moon goes into Scorpio. And I will say the moon in Scorpio next week, that's when we're really going to see the eclipse go to work, my loves. Monday, Tuesday of next week, when the moon is in Scorpio, making a square to the eclipse, that's when things are going to get a little volatile. I think that's when things are going to be a little chaotic, you know? We may see some drama, some crisis Monday, Tuesday of next week. So Louis is like, I don't even got it on me right now. How amazing is this? Yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be an amazing trip. I've always fantasized about Egypt and the pyramids, and I remember, doing a project when I was in elementary school where we literally dried out and mummified a chicken leg. Did anyone else do that? That was something I did in elementary school. I think it was like either fifth grade or sixth grade. We got a piece of chicken, we dried it out with like salt and like herbs and other stuff, and then we like mummified it. We like wrapped it in like bandage tape, and then we like created a little sarcophagus for it. It was crazy. But ever since then, I've always romanticized and thought about like Egypt. I've always, been like, oh, I would love to go to Egypt. I'd love to see the pyramids. I'd love to, do all that. And here I am, it's gonna happen. It's also a spiritual retreat. So I am gonna be going with one of my uh intuitive mentors. Her name is Therese Tierney. I've been working with her for what, 4 years now, 3 years now, 4 years now. She brought me to Bali. She brought me to Portugal, and now she's bringing me to Egypt. So I'm really excited because there's also going to be a like an intuitive activation component to this trip. Many of the people that I'm going with, half of the people already know because some of them are my clients or they've got into connection with Therese because of me. I connected them to Therese. So it's gonna be really cool because the group that's going is very intuitive. They're into the occult, they're into magic, they're into the unknown. So it's a nice group of people that are also going, that it's definitely going to enhance the experience. So yeah, I'm excited. I need it. I need it. All right, my loves. Well, it's 12 o'clock. We did good today. 3 hours? Not bad. Not bad at all. We did 3 hour live today. This is going to be posted on YouTube. It will be time stamped. I'm going to be on Threads and on Instagram. I'm going to be posting content talking about the eclipse, talking about the signs. So I will be giving you guys particular insight and information into how this eclipse energy is going to be hitting you. Um, it's always good practice, though, to learn a little bit of astrology for yourself. You know, that's one of the things I've noticed, which I love. Oh my God. I love on my page with all the posts that I've been posting recently. I love how people are doing the math and they're breaking down their own chart and they're putting together the stuff like that I'm like saying or the information that I'm sharing, they're like putting it together and they're like applying it to their own chart and then they're sharing that in the comment section and the posts. I love that you guys are doing that. My work, my whole goal with my page and everything that I do is to make astrology accessible, attainable, understandable, practical, applicable for people. So if you are on my page and if you're going through my posts and has you pull out your chart to look at some stuff, or has you pull up a chart to do some compatibility with an X or something. I love that. That's exactly what I want it to do. That's exactly what my posts are supposed to be doing. They're supposed to be getting you to take a look at your chart and get to know your chart and work with your chart, you know? I love like I think everyone should have a little bit of knowledge around astrology. I think it's helpful, you know? I think it's great. It's like everyone should know their chart just like everyone should be able to read. To me, it's like the same thing. And I think like, you know, astrology is hard, my loves. Yes, it is. It can be hard, but it doesn't have to be. It's not as hard as we make it. And astrology is not as hard as other people make it. There's a lot of astrologers that make astrology seem like it's the most difficult and complicated thing. And to them, that's their relationship with it and that's their experience of it. To me, I don't have that relationship with astrology, you know? Astrology can be very easy, can be very simple. We just gotta know how to do the math. We gotta know how to put the pieces together. Astrology is like chemistry. Astrology is literally the alchemy of the planets. If you mix this, and this together, the foundation of astrology is mixing the sign, the house, and the planet. If you can understand how to chemically mix together a sign, a house, and a planet and get meaning from it, if you know how to derive meaning from that combination, you're going to be a master astrologer. You're going to be great at astrology. That's the foundation of astrology. Okay. And let me tell you, there are many educated people, many educated astrologers that are still not able to do the basic math when it comes to their chart. They still don't know how to put together a sign, a house, and a planet. They know everything though. They know everything. They will talk to you about methods. They'll use the big astrological terms. But when it comes to delineation, when it comes to translation, when it comes to getting it extraction of accurate information from the sign, the planet, and the houses, they don't know how to do it. They're not delineating. There's no translation. There's no obtaining of the information. It's because it takes time to go ahead and learn how to do astrology and how to put the pieces of astrology together. You know, it's like a math class. The more problems that you do, the more math problems that you do, the better you get at it, the quicker that you're going to figure it out. You know what I mean? So that's why it's so important to use your chart as learning material. Your chart is what you should be using to learn astrology with. Okay? Go in and like applying the methods to your chart. You know, also use your kid's chart, use your family's chart, use whoever's chart you want to use. But it's working with the chart. It's doing the math. It's putting it together. It's delineating the meaning from the chart that's going to teach you astrology and that's going to make it useful. You know what I mean? One of my biggest pet peeves that I see with a lot of astrologers, especially on threads, is when they say something or make an observation astrologically, but they don't delineate it or they don't translate it or they don't give it meaning. You know, like, okay, the moon's in Libra. All right, but what does that mean? My question is always even when I'm working with another astrologer, if they want to point something out, my question to them right away is, what does it mean? But what does it mean? What does this mean? If you can't give it meaning, if you don't understand what it means, then don't call it out or point it out as an observation. Because it's pointless. Astrology with no meaning is pointless. You see what I'm saying? An observation with no meaning is useless. We can't do nothing with it. There's no utility behind it. The real magic of astrology is in delineation. It's in being able to translate what the stars are saying. What do they mean? What does this transit mean? What does this placement mean? These are the basics. These are basics. A lot of astrologers can't even do that. You know why? I'll tell you why. It's because they don't have the experience. And this is one of the things that I've realized in coming into contact with so many astrologers. A lot of them are socially awkward. A lot of them, they haven't developed their social skills. They don't know how to actually connect with people genuinely, or they don't have confidence in being able to display their knowledge and their wisdom. So what is that? So what happens? They have very little to no experience actually doing readings for people, actually working with people every day, you know? And the only way to become a better astrologer is by working with people, is by looking at people's charts, is by asking people questions, is by learning about people through their chart and getting to know them through their chart, but also helping them and guiding them through their chart. That's the only way you're going to get better. You know, you can study and read all the books and take all the classes for years on years on years. But then when it comes to actually sitting down and doing a reading for yourself or doing a reading for someone else, unless you have the experience of applying the information, it's there, it means nothing. You're going to have all this knowledge with no utility. You see? That's why it's like we got to build experience as astrologers, you know? And the more that you do astrology, you got to do astrology. Astrology is an action. Astrology is something that we do. It's not something that we perform. It's not something that we just know. No, it's something that you have to do. You have to interact with the chart. You have to apply the methods. You have to delineate the meaning. That's what gives it utility. You know? That's why people come to me because I'm great at this. I'm really good at giving people meaning. You know? I'll sit there and talk to people about one placement. And this is the other thing. One placement in your chart is going to mean like 30 or 40 different things, or even more. And it will continue to mean things. Your one placement in your chart, any placement, any given placement, will continue to manifest situations. They'll manifest people. They'll manifest jobs. They'll manifest experiences. They'll manifest illness. So it's like we can't just say, oh, the sun in the 10th house is this. It's going to be so many things. Your 10th house sun placement is going to tell you so many things about, but we have to be able to see and understand the full scope of astrology to get the full scope of meaning from one particular placement, you know? 10th house sun is going to tell you something about your dad. It's going to tell you something about your children. It's going to tell you something about your career. It's going to tell you something about your husband. It's going to tell you something about possibly, like it could tell you something also about your lineage. It could tell you about your legacy. It could tell you something about real estate. It's going to tell you so many things. And that is where the magic and the wisdom of astrology comes alive, in the ability to extrapolate meaning, accurate information from a placement, and to also see how that placement continues to play out in people's lives. Once we are aware of our placements on our chart, we can manifest the highest, best vibrational experience that they have available to us, instead of succumbing to the lower, more negative or more challenging, vibrations of particular placements. Like a 12th house moon, you can either be a psychic or an intuitive, or you can end up being a depressed criminal and a drug addict. What are you going to choose? You see what I'm saying? There's certain placements that will demand you make a choice in how you embody and express their energy. You see, some placements are really challenging and really hard, but those placements can bring the best reward. They can bring magical experiences. They can bring the opportunity, but it's going to take a little bit more time to master that particular placement and to get in right relationship with it, right? So that's one of the things that I think is so important about astrology and the direction it's going. It's like we also want to understand that our relationship with astrology is evolving. We're in a period where we're understanding that we do have a sense of agency, or we do have a sense of free will, or we do have a sense of say over our life. And so we're not experiencing astrology the way the ancients experienced it, which was from a place of fate or destiny, or even from a place of fear, right? In ancient times, even to this day in India, when it comes to Vedic astrology, astrology was seen from a place of fate. Like you have no control over your life. This is what's written and this is what's going to happen. But we're in this really interesting place right now when it comes to astrology, especially with our relationship with it collectively, where we're like, wait a minute, we actually have a little bit of free will. We have a little bit of say. And so how can we use astrology to make the best of our free will, or to, claim power in our life or claim a sense of authority in our life, right? And I think that's like a healthy way to relate to astrology, but it's also kind of like the evolutionary direction, right, that we're going into with astrology, where we're going to continue to see that we're going to be using astrology more and more to like plan our life, to schedule our life or to prepare for things to come. And that's the best way to use astrology. The best way to use astrology is, it's a preventative thing. It could also warn us and let us know, hey, this could happen. You know, if you are not taking care of yourself, this is one of the things that could happen. This is where illness will come and find you. This is where hardship or difficulty can come and find you, right? It warns us and it gives us an idea of like, hey, this is what could happen and what could manifest. But if you like do X, Y, and Z, then you'll get the best or the most positive manifestation of this planet or of this placement, right? So I think, yeah. If I someone asked if I get to know the cause of my death, can I change this with law of manifestation prayer? Yeah, definitely. It depends on what your philosophy is around death, though. Some people believe that it's already scripted, that our death is already pre-written and we have no control of it, where other people are like, wait a minute. And my experience, so this, tell you something. I'll share this with you guys, and then I'm gonna wrap up here because I'm getting tired and I need to go get some food and yeah. Anyways, I want to share this experience with you guys that I've had in doing so many readings over the years for people. Okay. Sometimes the download that I get with people that have passed away is that their own choices and behaviors, like dietary habits, a lack of self-care, being stagnant, not moving their body, like they tell me that they had an element of influence around the longevity of their life. So if they like die from like a chronic illness or a sickness that resulted in a lack of self-care, a message that I've gotten is I could have been here for longer. My lifespan could have been longer, but because I did not take care of myself, because I wasn't, healing myself, because I wasn't going to the doctor, because I was avoiding and ignoring certain things that my body was telling me, I passed away sooner than what I could have passed away from. Or, my passing came sooner, right, than what it could have naturally been or whatever, right? But then there's other readings that I do where when people pass away, they tell me the way that I passed was written, was fated. There was nothing that could have been done. There was nothing that could have been prevented. This is exactly the way that I was supposed to go. And there is no free will, or there is no agency, or there is no choice over their passing. Well, they tell me I was meant to go at this time, so let my next of kin know that this was had nothing to do with them, that this couldn't have been prevented, that this is exactly what was supposed to happen. So with that, my understanding of death is that not all people's passings are scripted or written. Some people do have agency over the longevity of their life. Some people's test is to take care of themselves in this lifetime. Some people are being tested through their health. Health is a test. The body is a test. Everything is a test. We're all being tested here. That's why we're here. Okay. But we're all being tested in various ways. Some people are being tested emotionally, some people are being tested psychologically, and some people are being tested physically with their habits, with their behaviors, with their actions, with what they're going to do. And for those people that are being tested health wise, their lifespan has a lot to do with their health, their habits. Unhealthy habits shorten our life. This isn't rocket science, this isn't anything new. I mean, so it's just something to think about. Yeah, like when accidents occur. Yeah, accidents are another fated thing. Like many accidents are scripted and fated, especially accidents that leave like lifelong injuries or accidents that bring like the end of a life. A lot of accidents are kind of like this was gonna happen. Like, And you'll be able to see it in the chart. You know what I mean? Like you'll be able to go and look at the chart. That's one of the things I always do with my clients that have experienced like tragedy or loss. um, I'll go back to the solar return chart of that year and I'll go back to look at the transits of that particular date or that were surrounding that date to literally show them, look at this in your chart. Like look at how this tragedy, this loss, this whatever they went through is showing up in the chart so literally. And it's like it's like every time it's like right there. It's so visible. It can be seen, you know? So it's kind of like, and then what I notice is a lot of times with these tragedies is that there's certain things that are indicated in the chart that this was like fated, like this was destined. Like there was nothing that they could have done over this. There was no agency that they had over this situation. Like this is exactly how it's supposed to go, right? And I think what it does when we're able to give people closure. We're able to relieve people of guilt that they have associated with like tragedies or losses or things that happen, you know? Like I literally had a client that um was carrying guilt over the loss of the father. Their father had a medical emergency that led to his passing. There was malpractice involved. And before I knew like any of this, this was like it came through during a tarot reading as we were going deeper. What he showed me was that it didn't matter if it was like if there was like a different operation date. It didn't matter if there was a different doctor. It didn't matter if he had went to a different hospital. The outcome would have been the same. And so right away, what came through was, you know, my client, which that was their parent, their father, had been carrying a lot of guilt and had been going rummaging in their mind around like, oh, maybe I should have brought them to a different doctor, or maybe if we had showed up earlier, or maybe if, the surgery was on a different date or something, or if we had delayed something or whatever. And what, you know, the father who had passed away on their side literally told me was all this like going back and forth that they're doing, tell them to let it all go. Tell them to release it and let it all go. Because all it's doing is giving them a false sense of responsibility, a false sense of control, a false sense of ownership over how that situation unfolded. And their father that passed away wanted to free them from that burden. Like, there's no control over this. Like, this was going to happen regardless, right? So, in that moment, in that reading, that client was able to get so much closure with the passing of their father and was able to get so many answers. I was able to give them so many answers based on the chart and also based on kind of like the tarot reading, because that's where I get a lot of my like mediumship information, or when I have mediumship experiences, it happens through the tarot usually. Um, but it was just such a beautiful reading, like they were crying and it was such a cathartic, such a healing reading for them. And it was beautiful to be able to deliver those messages, right? So the reason why I'm bringing this up is because someone asked about like death, and they asked about whether or not we have like control or agency over like our passing. And it's not a simple answer, it could be a little bit of both, where we do have agency and control over our lifespan, if health is a test for us, especially, right? But also there are fated events, destined events um that will lead to our passing that we have no control over. Like what happened to Steve Irwin, like him getting stuck, like struck in the heart, him getting struck in the heart by a stingray. And, for those of you that don't know who Steve Irwin is, he was like this Australian guy that was really big in like, I think the 90s and 2000s. And he was the kind of like pioneering, the crocodile hunter, he was a pioneering guy that would go and, wrestle with crocodiles and grab snakes, and he was like the first one to do it. But yeah, he ended up passing away from a stingray impaling him in the heart, and that is in his chart. It's in his chart. So that way that he passed, it was there already. It was there in his chart. So it's kind of like, it's hard to say how much of our passing is predetermined, but what I do know that is that it's not all predetermined, it's not all predetermined. Yeah, you should go take a look at his chart. It's really interesting actually. But you can see him pass having like a sudden accidental passing, it involving the heart or the chest area in some type of way. It's in his chart. You can see it, especially with the transits on that day as well that he was going through, you know. Um, Someone asked if I predict death. No. If someone is healthy and well, and someone asks me about, oh, when am I going to die? That's between you and God. Okay. You could go ahead and talk to God about that. But I have had clients that are dealing with terminally ill spouses or family members, and they want to have an idea of when things are going to escalate or get worse, or they want to have an idea of when that person could likely pass away. And in those situations, I do give them insight into that. I'll will give them insight like, hey, listen, this can be the date where, you know, things get really hard, where, they get hospitalized or where their condition severely worsens. I will never give like a hardcore prediction date, for like death. I just won't do that. I don't have that. Like, God is all knowing, right? Like the divine spirit is all knowing, right? And I think, just this is my perspective. You guys don't have to agree with me. It's totally up to you. Your beliefs are yours. I don't think we should speak on things around death for people. I don't think we should ever speak death over others. And I don't think we should engage death unless we have a spiritual practice that is a safe container for that relationship, you know? So like there's a lot of people that work with Santa Muerte, right? There's a lot of people that work with Saturn even. Saturn's a planet of death, and endings. Along with Pluto, Pluto more modernly, but Saturn is a traditional planet of death and endings. There are people that are devotees of Saturn. There's people that work with, Santa Muerte. So they have a container, they have a tradition, they have a particular practice and how they work with death or how they understand death, right? But for me, I don't have any of that. I'm not working with any deities associated with death or endings, or I'm not working with Saturn in that way. So that's why I don't speak on death, or, I won't make like these really hard predictions around it or anything like that. Yeah, so someone said, yeah, I hate how everyone is sitting around waiting for Trump to die. Yeah, like that is it's crazy. You know what I mean? It's like, and then the selective outrage when it comes to certain charts are okay to work on, but other charts are not. Like I was literally I broke down Nolan Wells's chart because I was just called to it. And then I had a whole bunch of people attacking me like, oh my gosh, that's so disrespectful. And who are you to be, talking about this and, blah, 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 and all this. And then I turn around and it's literally within the same day, some of these people that were attacking me are going ahead and reading Trump's chart and wishing him death. Like, what is this selective outrage? What is this favoritism? What is this like? Oh, some people are fair game for like astrology if they're like bad, evil people, right? Where other people are not. Like, what is that? Like, y'all are weird. Like, oh no, it's just so weird. It's like, it's just crazy. Yeah, haters. Yeah. And then I realized that a lot of like the negativity or the attack that I get from other astrologers, it has nothing to do with the topic. It has nothing to do with the issue at hand. It has something else. It has to do with something else. Because like it's the targeted attack that makes it different. Yeah, now Biden is sick. Yeah, I'm a little worried about Biden. I was looking at his chart. Well, Biden doesn't have a healthy chart. So that's the thing is, some people they have charts that make them more predisposed to illness or sickness, you know. Some people have charts that weaken their body or that indicate their immune system, their body, or even their ability to heal and recover being weakened or being difficult, right? And Biden has a chart like that. So, Biden has a chart that is kind of like ill, a little sick. Yeah. So someone asked the question, did you ever learn Vedic chart or Indian astrology? Is it more accurate? So I'm doing a lot of Vedic astrology. A lot of what you're seeing in my posts is me applying Vedic methods or Vedic significations, Vedic under house significations to Western charts. Okay. And I'm a firm believer that if we are good enough as astrologers, our Vedic chart and our Western chart will tell us the exact same thing and are capable of doing the same things. And we can also mix the traditions and we can apply methods from each tradition to the other chart. But we got to be open-minded though, because the thing is like one of the things I realized is like so many of us are very like we're very closed-minded and we're very ignorant and we're very kind of like I only want to do astrology this way. I only want to see astrology this way. I only want to study this tradition, and we attach ourselves to like certain, certain astrological traditions or understandings. I'm a Jupiter person. I'm a Pisces rising. I'm a ninth house stellium in Scorpio. I have Jupiter in Aries with the North Node trine Saturn and Sag in the 10th house between the second and the 10th. So I want to learn anything and everything. And I don't practice pigeonholed astrology. I have studied a lot of astrology. I've studied a lot of traditions of astrology. I started in Hellenistic. I've studied evolutionary astrology. I've studied medical astrology. I've studied vocational astrology. I've studied Vedic Eastern astrology. So I do everything astrology. And I think that in order for us to be holistic practitioners of astrology, we have to learn as much as we can. We got to pull from as much as we can so that we can get a nice, filled out perspective around astrology, around the astrology that actually works. One of my biggest pet peeves with Hellenistic astrology is I think a lot of the methods are outdated. I think you can get the same information much quicker using Vedic methods than using Hellenistic traditional methods, Western methods of astrology. You know, when it comes to like, zodiacal releasing, when it comes to what's another method that they use? Oh, solar arc directions, right? Uh Zodiacal releasing, which is a timing method, solar arc directions, which is a timing method that Western astrologers, Hellenistic astrologers use. You need a lot of time. You need to do a lot of math to get information from those methods. With the volume of clients that I see using those methods, using zodiacal releasing, using solar arc direction, it doesn't make sense. I literally don't have the time to sit there and do the math for every client before a session. That's why with a lot of my readings, or with a lot of what I'm using when I'm doing readings, is I'm using Vedic techniques. I'm using Eastern methodologies. I'm using Eastern ways of reading a chart because what I've found is that not only are they much quicker, they're much easier to do, but they're much more accurate a lot of times. They're much more accurate. And this is another thing, especially with the houses. This is where I think every Western astrologer should study Eastern astrology. The houses, I hate to say it, but this is the truth and this is my experience. Eastern astrologers have the house systems figured out way better than Western astrologers do. I've studied Western astrology, Hellenistic astrology in the beginning, Demetra George, Chris Brennan, reading their books, you know, um, and one of the things I noticed was just how lacking the house system is or house significations are in Western astrology. It really feels like Westerners where they're really like where they're really at a loss or they really kind of like struggle. It's around understanding how the houses fit into the whole system, how the houses actually manifest in real live situations with people. And I think that's where Western astrologers can really grow is by studying Eastern astrology, specifically the Eastern house system and the Eastern house significations. 'Significations, you know? Someone said, I feel like the most, I feel like the moment we learn through the perspective of astrology being a map and us having zodiac signs as tools and not identity, people will be prone to being open-minded. Yeah. 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 We got to look at astrology from a lens that's beyond our own person. You know, I don't do astrology. Well, I do astrology for myself, but my astrology is for other people. And I see a lot of very selfish astrologers. I'm when I'm on threads and stuff like this, all I see is astrologers talking about themselves. Like, what are y'all doing? No one really cares about what's going on in your own personal chart. And then like it's just crazy because it's like, okay, we're sharing our own personal astrology, but then we don't even know what it means. So why are we even sharing it? Like it's just, yeah, I think I don't know, my loves. I just think narcissism is running rampant in the United States, in Western culture right now. And I think that's the biggest problem. And we're seeing narcissism everywhere. We're seeing it in leadership. We're seeing it in spiritual practice with spiritual practitioners. We're seeing it with religious leaders. We're just seeing it everywhere. Yeah, very egocentric, very narcissistic. Like if I go on an astrologer's page and all their content is literally them talking about themselves or them complaining about their chart or them, constantly talking about like, yeah, themselves, their own opinions, their own whatever, whatever. That's narcissism. That's egocentricity, And it's like, and another thing you got to remember is people don't have to be confident to be narcissistic. There are very insecure people that are incredibly narcissistic. There are very insecure people that have a low sense of self-worth and self-esteem that are very narcissistic. We tend to think that narcissism requires confidence and boldness or a strong sense of character. No, it doesn't. Actually, I would argue that the majority of people that exhibit narcissistic tendencies are actually very depressed and very insecure and very, sensitive and delicate around the relationship with themselves. So, yeah. All right, my loves. This has been a nice little rant. The rants are fine for after we're done with the live. We wrapped up the live about 30 minutes ago, around the topic at hand. So it's been nice to talk about, some of these things with y'all and to share some of my ideas and perspectives with you. Thank you guys for hanging out and listening. Narcissism is a defense that develops living in shame. Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for being here and hanging out with me. Everyone that bought a badge, I appreciate you guys so much. It's always wonderful to spend this time with you guys. Someone said, at the end of the day, our bodies are oracles where our soul chooses to reside in. Yes, true. At some specific moment, the position of the planets where we're born. Yes, and we can also see this. I see this in pregnancy astrology when I'm doing my procreation astrology, when I'm helping clients with pregnancy, and you know, the planets have to be in a certain place in the sky that align with your parents' charts in order for you to be born. In order for us to be born. This is why, like, divine timing is such an important factor when it comes to pregnancy and procreation. You know, I think astrology is a great tool when it comes to fertility. I think it's one of the best tools when it comes to fertility, and understanding when someone is meant to be born or when a child is meant to be born. You know, our children inherit placements from us. So if there are things in the sky that don't reflect the astrology of the parents, a child cannot come and will not come. So when there are certain things happening in your own personal chart, like let's say you have Jupiter in Virgo and you're going to be going through a Jupiter return next year and you've been wanting to have a baby and Jupiter is the planet of the firstborn child, or Jupiter brings babies, guess what? Oh my gosh, I'm having my Jupiter return next year. Jupiter's going to be in Virgo. I want to have a baby. Next year should be the window that you start trying, you know? Waiting until the South Node gets out of Virgo, because what else? The South Node brings loss. So I've had a lot of Virgo, Pisces clients, they have their sun, moon, or their rising there, mainly the moon or the rising, that dealt with a miscarriage or an abortion this year because of the South Node going through Virgo and the eclipses going through Pisces and Virgo. The eclipses are not good for fertility. They're not good for procreation astrology. A lot of, and you'll see this. You're gonna see this. I'm gonna tell you this right now. With this eclipse coming up, you're gonna see there's gonna be some people that miscarry. The eclipse will literally energetically knock a baby out of the womb. There's going to be pregnancies, sudden pregnancies that happen, but there will be miscarriages. It's a sad thing, but it's literally what the eclipses do. It's connected to the eclipses. So, all right, my loves. Well, we're going to leave it here. I love you all so much. I'm booked and busy right now. I'm going to try to open up some more spots before I go, but I can't make any guarantees. Um, I'm leaving for vacation, like I said in a few minutes ago. I'm leaving for vacation on the 3rd of September, and I'm going to be coming back around September 22nd. So, but yeah, as of now, my books are closed just because I'm like fully booked. So, um, I love you all so much. Thank you for being here. You know, my reading is live. All my readings are done live. So we go live on, so someone asked, is your reading a report, live, or both? Okay. I have a weak Mercury, so I will not be writing you an essay. All right. And I'm an intuitive channel. So I'm intuitive, I'm psychic. So the magic of my work comes alive in sessions when I'm face to face with you. So the way my readings work is we go live together on Zoom. I share my screen with you to show you your chart, and then I literally give you the reading by walking through the chart, and then we'll look at a transit chart, and sometimes we'll do synastry, and sometimes we'll go ahead and look at your solar return chart, and we'll look at your perfection year. We look at all these things. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how it works. So we go live, we're in person, we're face to face, because also when I'm giving a reading, I'm getting downloads, I'm getting information for you. So that's why I don't do written readings. And honestly, I don't have the time to do written readings. I don't have the time. Even just typing up a little post on Threads takes me forever. So I could imagine like how long it would take me to like write something up for someone. I speak so much faster, I speak so much quicker. So it's so much easier for me to get the information across live. Also, we record the reading as well. So we can record the reading. That's one of the I think one of the most that's one of the most like probably the one of the favorite features of my clients is the fact that we record the reading and they're able to go back and watch it and like take notes. I have clients that will rewatch a reading like 10 times. And they tell me that they always get something new out of it, when they rewatch a reading that I did. They always get something new out of it. Or there's always something that they missed or something they get reminded of. So it's so funny when that happens. But yeah, I've had clients rewatch readings 10 times. They told me, "Oh yeah, I watched it like 10 times and it was just so impactful." And yeah. All right, my loves, I'll see you guys around, okay? Take care of yourselves, be well. This is going to be posted on YouTube, this today's live, and it will be timestamped as well. So it will be available on YouTube by this evening. All right. Take care of yourselves. Stay grounded. Do your best to not be overwhelmed by this eclipse season. Do not descend into chaos. Keep it all together. Okay. Stay healthy, stay good, stay well. Keep your head on your shoulders. All right. Don't go crazy. Okay. We're going to see some crazy people. There's people going crazy a little bit. People are going to be going crazy with this eclipse. So, all right. I'll see you guys. Love you. Bye.